and today is August 4th, 2020, and we are opening our briefing session of our Duncanville City Council. Want to make sure that everyone understands that we are still in virtual mode, and I'm trying to look at participants. City Secretary, as I see it, we're still missing Councilmember Jameson.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I presume she is trying to get on. We can go ahead and open up. So the opening time was at 6 o'clock. Want to remind everyone that this is in accordance with the order of the Office of the Governor issued on March 16th, as extended by the Office of the Governor on June 12th of 2020, that City Council will conduct regular City Council meetings by video conference in order to advance the public health goal of limiting face-to-face meetings, also called social distancing, in an effort to slow the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. This is an open meeting conducted by video conference. There will be no public access to a physical location. We do have some citizen comments that have been submitted, and I will cover those at an appropriate time in the agenda at the City Council meeting itself. To our audience, everyone is in listen mode, and each council member, when you wish to speak, please use the raise your hand feature in the tools, or give us a good positive physical wave so that we can see that quite clearly. And the City Secretary Downs will help me do that and keep us in order. And again, as we're in the virtual mode, any votes that will be taken will be a roll call vote, and City Secretary will go down the roll on that. So getting on with what we have. City, I still don't see Councilmember Jameson.
She is trying to log in. I'm in contact with her.
Okay, good.
There she is, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Okay, good evening, Councilmember Jameson. I did call it to order at 6 o'clock, but only did some housekeeping announcements of virtual meetings and so forth. We have not conducted any official business other than saying that we do have some citizen comments, and at the appropriate time, I will be reading those into the minutes, into the record. Moving on with that, we'll move into our briefing session. And for that, we'll go to Mr. Fredrickson, our interim city manager. If you would go ahead and read, and let's discuss any consented items, please.
Okay. Mayor and members of council, there's a number of consent items. Consent item 4A is a resolution confirming the interim city manager's appointment of Mr. Nigel Robinson as a member of the Duncanville Civil Service Commission to fill a vacancy that is being left by Mr. Curtis Smith. In order to fill the vacancy, as you may know, in Chapter 143, the city manager makes a recommendation for appointment to the Civil Service Commission. A panel made up of myself, Chief Robert Brown, Chief Sam Rohde, and HR Director Todd Siegel interviewed 3 candidates for the Civil Service Commission. And we had at least one round of interviews, and then completed a second round of interviews, and met again with Mr. Robinson and make the recommendation that we appoint him as a member of the Civil Service Commission. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, he is also here if anybody has any questions of Mr. Robinson. But it was a unanimous recommendation to appoint Mr. Robinson. He's been with lived in the city of Duncanville for about 3 years. One of the important things to mention, again, is that, you must be over 25, but you can also not have served on a public office, whether it's a board or commission, city council, what have you. And we've also, when we visited with each of them, wanted to make sure that they understood the civil service rules. They were all handed those rules, and Mr. Robinson took the time to go over them thoroughly. Obviously, any new appointment to the Civil Service Commission would go through additional training to understand and better appreciate civil service rules in the state of Texas. Item 4B is a resolution for an ILA between the city of Duncanville and the Cedar Hill, discussing landscape maintenance along the US 67 corridor in conjunction with the Green Ribbon grant funding. It is my understanding that we will probably be asked to have that moved to individual consideration, so we can discuss that more if you wish. Item 4C is a resolution approving the proposal from Blue Cross Blue Shield for a 1-year term for medical insurance for staff coverage or for employees. This will be a pass-through, so there will be no rate increase. As you may remember, at the June budget workshop, we were anticipating a rather stiff increase. And I just want to give my appreciation to Todd and Hub, that's our consultant, that worked very hard to get that pass-through, so there will be no rate increase. There'll be no changes in the medical coverage. This year, however, just to point out that it is mandated that any spouse that's employed with another firm outside of Duncanville would have to use their insurance, and that we will not coverage unless otherwise they sign an affidavit showing that they are not offered that kind of insurance elsewhere. And so that is a major change. Item 4D is a resolution authorizing the amendment to Resolution 2020-004. This is for the VNA contract, where we receive grant funding to provide meals for seniors. Due to the COVID, we have seen a market increase with the number of individuals going through and receiving meals. So this is supplementing that, adding more funds to that account, or to that grant or agreement. And so we need council approval for that item. Again, those will be monies that we will receive from the outside agency to help supplement that. And then finally, on item 4E, receive a certificate of additional sales tax. This is required now due to SB2, where we have to look at the sales tax, see if there's any impact to debt service. We have the half-cent that goes to the property tax reduction, but there is no impact to debt service as far as sales tax. But this is a requirement that council pass this to certify that we're not using the sales tax for the debt service. So as part of that. So those are the items for individual consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Frederickson.
I would like to pull 4B.
Item 4B, consider a resolution approving terms and conditions of the ILA. Councilmember Jameson would like that to go to individual consideration. Do I understand it correctly?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Let me make a note in my notes here. All right. Mr. Cooks, did I see your hand?
You did, Mayor. Thank you, and good evening. Good evening, everyone. Hey, City Manager Ferguson, would you remind me that you said on the ribbon, on the green ribbon, on the thing we were doing with Cedar Hill on the sign, will that be on Duncanville property? And I know they're going to be servicing it, but will it also be on Duncanville city limits? And if so, remind me why.
So we
So
were,
let me,
Are we going to talk about this now?
no, let me interrupt. Let me interrupt. Councilmember Cooks, the purpose of Councilmember Jameson asking to have that item pulled from consent to individual consideration is specific to your question. So
Okay, all right.
we will discuss that when we get to items of individual consideration.
All right, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So any other issues with the consent? If not, we will move on to our briefings and presentations. The briefing and presentation is discuss city-owned properties obtained through previous foreclosures. And this is by Ms. Jessica James, our Economic Development Director. Ms. James.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. This evening, as the Mayor stated, I'm going to discuss with you some different properties that the city has obtained through foreclosures as the properties didn't sell at the Dallas County Sheriff's sale. And then we would like to get some direction from City Council this evening in terms of what direction that you would like to go with these properties to get them back on the tax rolls. Next slide, please. This is a list of the properties. This was in your agenda item that we will be discussing this evening. Obviously, a number of these look familiar to you, and some we haven't dealt with very much in the past. So we'll get into each one of these individually. Next slide, please. For Belmont Place, as you know, is located in Thoroughbred Estates. This piece of property, basically the lot is almost unbuildable because of the creek area in it. In order for a house to be built on it, would have to be in the very back of the property, which makes it very difficult to meet all the requirements necessary to be able to construct a home in there. We have had a number of people that have looked at lot 6 next to it, but most of them have contacted the city, and they were also interested in lot 4 to try to combine those because they do have issues with that creek area. As you can see there at the bottom of the screen, I have listed there the different lot sizes, and then also the Dallas County Appraisal District market values that on these properties we'll go through. However, I do want to point out that even though I've listed these DCAD market values, some of the properties, because of the nature of them being unbuildable and because of some of the issues with them, that might be what DCAD has listed. But as we move forward with these properties, we might find that some of those prices are somewhat unrealistic. So really one of the potential uses, as I discussed a minute ago with this piece of property being number 4, would be to potentially look at buyers that might be interested in lot 6, and that way it could be combined into possibly a good developable lot. Next slide, please. $923 Jungle Drive. This is a single family residential lot. The homes in the area, some of the challenges, they are on septic systems. That's not stopping it by any
Challenge.
I'm sorry, Ms. Jameson?
Yeah, that's not a challenge. Our whole district is on septic.
Yes, ma'am. And the lot is heavily treed, so it would require a tree survey, but this would be a great lot to develop a single family residence on it. You can see that it's 0.32 acres, and the DCAD market value they have listed at $38,500. Next slide, please. $805 West Wheatland. I'll be discussing this property with you as well as the next property that's on Venus Drive. Both of these lots were struck off to the city previously for a potential park area. Both of these lots also were previously discussed with City Council, between the City Council and the Parks Board during your joint meeting. Also, Timothy Hamilton is supposed to be available this evening. So if you have any questions as we talk about this lot and then the lot to the north of it on Venus Drive, he can answer those questions for you. You can see there that this lot is 2.865 acres, and then the DCAD market value is $249,600. It is next to, you can see there commercial in the back, and then you have residential to the north and to the south, and the park is to the west. Next slide, please. This is that lot that we just discussed that is to the north. Again, this is this lot here, the size is just over 3 acres, and the value of it is $132,550. And again, this is a potential lot to be combined into possibly a park. Next slide, please. $118 Jewel Lane. This is a complicated piece of property because it is landlocked, and so you can see that it has no access to a road on there. Really, therefore, the best use for council to possibly consider would be to for us to visit with one of the adjacent property owners, whether that be to the north, which is 1314, I'm sorry, not 1314, whether that be to the north, or then also 1314 is there to the west of that property. And that's 1314 is actually a commercial building, and Farmers Insurance, for instance, is in there. Both properties that are adjacent to 118 Jewel Lane are owned by, the one to the north is owned by Metro Investments, and then the strip center there is owned by Jammer LTD Partnerships. Next slide, please.
Mayor, do we ask questions now if we want?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry. Yes, please. Would you please go back a slide?
Go back to that one. This is just a strategy here. If you give this up, you're not going to get any, like this site, you're not going to get anything for it, at all. But if you keep it, okay, you're going to get nothing. If you keep it, it could be one day that it becomes strategic for somebody that's redeveloping this area that needs the city, and you could use that as a chip to make a better development. So if this is going to redevelopment, because nobody's going to give you anything for it. From a strategy standpoint, very easily this area could get redeveloped, and then you have kind of a key piece to trade that, to help a development happen. So that's just my thought on that property. So.
Okay.
Ms. James, a question. As we go through, are you asking for a decision from the council on each one of these as we go through them, or this
No.
is strictly information for right now?
Yes, sir, Mayor. This what we'll do is we'll just cover each piece, some background information on each piece, and then at the end, there's a couple options here that we can talk about, and we'll have potential recommendations at the end for the council to consider.
On each property or just an overall?
On each property.
Okay.
Well, then we need to be able to ask questions along the way right now instead of just get down and ask all of them, because you can't remember them if we're going to come back to them. So, I mean,
Yes, sir, please feel free. Okay. Next slide, please.
No, because
Okay. 110 West Magnolia Lane. This is the piece of property that Mr. Ramey had previously discussed with council. We just wanted to give you an update. Staff is waiting on the final survey for council to decide exactly what you would like to do. And if you all remember the direction, staff was going to get a final survey to determine exactly the meets and bounds of the property. And this is one of those that you won't have to decide this evening, because we will be bringing it back to you at a future date once we get the final survey done, because you can see the lot size there that's listed in DCAT and the market value. But again, this lot has some more challenges there because of access being landlocked and that easement in that driveway. So we just wanted to give you an update and let you know we hadn't forgot about this piece of property, but we still are waiting on the final survey, and we'll bring it back to you for further consideration at a future council meeting.
Again, the same situation here. Don't give this up. You know, if you can't get a development there like you want, I mean, use it to get your goal done, to get a nice development through these. If you give it up, somebody's just going to continue on with the way it is. And plus, last time we talked about, we were going to study this and talk about this a little bit more as a council, this whole little development here. And I mean, this is a good opportunity. We could make a mess of this, or it could be a good opportunity we set the base for. You know, just kind of the same as the last one. That's all.
Yes, sir. And at a future council meeting, as soon as we get all the information, we'll bring it back, and then you all can have those discussions and determine how you would like to handle the piece of property. Yes, sir.
Well, if we're talking about these all at once, the two pieces of property that we talked about in the very beginning that are in my district, I mean, that was bizarre, because what we should be doing is talking about getting full market value. And I understand, I spoke with Pamela Johnson today, and she said that Dallas has changed the way they're doing it, particularly because of the times we're in. And we need some real estate people involved who sell residential real estate. And I mean, because when you're talking about a septic system, that whole area is septic system, and we don't have a problem. And it's not a negative thing. I'm on septic at the lake, and everybody around here is. And they're $1 million homes here, so it's not a problem. But we need somebody who will get not only what DCAT is saying market value is, but maybe more. And that's what she said, is they've changed their whole way about it, that they're not just giving away stuff, that they want top dollar. And that's what we need to be doing, is talking about how we want to market it, and not just, I don't even like negating these properties like we're doing here, and talking about the negative parts of them, because the two in my district I'm familiar with. And while one of the lots might have some interesting issues, I have people calling me all the time asking me, what's the city going to do with that? What's the city going to do with that? That they're interested in buying it. So they need to be marketed, not why it sat there for so long, I don't know.
Yeah, but if I may interject too, Councilmember James, this is exactly the kind of input that we're needing from council for each of these individual properties. Because I think, to Councilmember Anderson's point, there may be some properties that council may say we want to hold on to for better opportunities. But to your point, Councilmember Jameson, there may be some that we need to get going. And to your point, if we need to bring in a real estate person to help us with that, that's exactly the input we need and that we'll want from council. And again, the idea is just, this is kind of part informational, but also to say, give us guidance, you know, I think to the point is, we don't want to be holding on to these properties if we don't want to, but if we want to, we just need for each of those some direction.
You might, to Councilmember Jameson's comments, I agree. You know, like that one property down there that supposedly just has the creek on it. You know, there's many places that I've been to that there's very special properties, houses that are built on odd things in buildings. And so it gives us a unique, especially in her district up there, which is already unique. It gives us an opportunity to maybe look at that. So maybe we want to look at some planners, maybe to come look at some of these lots and come up with a couple of maybe, even ideas that, or either at least some assistance of looking at some of them.
True. I just might point out on some of them, you've already got existing zoning, so that's going to kind of really dictate what they're going to be able to put on there. But yes, I mean, I think on some of these lots, especially commercial, they
You could
might-
change that for the right circumstance. That could be changed if it made the place better.
Well, theirs isn't particularly zoning. They've got a homeowners association, but I think you could get them to, it doesn't cover the entire Thoroughbred Hills. It's only the first streets in Thoroughbred Hills. So you could probably get them to work with you on what would be agreeable to the neighborhood. You got two lots that are next door to each other, and I know on my street in my neighborhood, when I first moved there, I was sent a letter, and they asked me, did I mind if a particularly large lot was divided? And we decided as a neighborhood not to divide it. So they built a really, really, really big house on that one lot. And since they've got two lots there together, they might, and if one has issues, it might be something that the homeowners association there, along with the city, worked with them and figured out a way that maybe it could be replatted to one lot and maybe more useful then.
Right. Especially if they're extenuating circumstances.
Right. And I'm sure the neighborhood, because they're all on point on those lots. Trust me. So they're
Well,
watching.
One point about Thoroughbred Hills, that is a very, very nice neighborhood. And the fact that there is a creek doesn't mean it precludes anybody from getting an ecological engineer in to study it and find out how it can be, how a residential property could be properly placed and make a beautiful
Right.
property of it.
Right.
Because the DCAT value on that property is pretty extraordinary. So that's
Yes.
another one that, do we jettison it, or do we ask a market or real estate, has been suggested, to come in and find an engineer that knows how to engineer that property and make it well. So that's what we're going through, where we're looking at each one of these and deciding.
And you have some engineers that live right there that would probably do it just for their neighborhood to decide how the best way to market it. And the one on Jungle, same thing. It's a beautiful lot, and septic systems are not a problem.
No, they are not a problem, and they have been advanced in the past decades to the extent that they're highly regulated. They're not inexpensive now,
Oh, they never were.
Yeah. So they're with the regulation from EPA and ecology and so forth. Everything can be done today. There's no reason to say that property should be struck off simply because whoever owns that and builds a house is going to have a septic tank. That's all just within the cost of engineering that property. So
Yes, and we talked to the TCEQ, and they said that they did not have a problem with septic systems in Texas at all, because there are more septic systems than there are regular plumbing. When you look at all the ranch and rural land, and for you guys who don't know, the city council did a soil sample study and spent $40,000 on it. And they came in and took soil samples where regular sewage was and where septic systems were. And guess what? Their septic systems were not polluting. It was the pollution from the areas where regular plumbing was, because they have areas where those pipes break and dump 5, 6, 7, 800 gallons of raw sewage. So there's not a problem.
right.
Mayor, one more quick thing. I'm sorry. To me, this is really important, because we don't have that much land. And I think to do what is best and what's realistic is, something I'm interested in helping them look at. But if I own this land as an owner, a developer, as a person, what I would do is I would go in and I'd clean it up where people could see it. I'd have a good survey. That's the way you would market a piece of land or a building or anything else. You have it, you know, and I know we do that. I mean, we keep our land clean and stuff, but even this one a little bit more, it just might get you that extra special house. So anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Well, and that follows on to the comment that we get some help in marketing this, not we look to get some expertise from realtors that have the ability to help us do that. So point made, well done. Okay, moving on, Ms. James.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. This is 403 West Danieldale Road. This is a little sliver piece of property there. As you can see, it's very small, 0.8 of an acre. One of the challenges that this lot has is that it's not buildable, and the fact that there's a gas line on the lot. And so it does, there to the west is the development that I know a number of you are familiar with, Randy Gobert did. That's the property there to the west. And then to the right there, this is interesting. That lot's address is actually 403 East Danieldale. The property owner does have that currently for sale. So there's been some discussion to see if, you know, there might be a potential if they would like, if the council is interested, possibly seeing if they would be in acquiring the property to add to their additional acreage that they have there. Like I said, as it is, we just, the city does mow it. You cannot build a structure on top of it, but there is a potential there as well. Next slide, please. Oh,
Is this the one about Village Tech?
yes, that would be correct. Across the street. And again, this is just an update. I know that this is a piece of property that we will be discussing further in a joint EDC council meeting. I know that we've discussed that, but just kind of give a recap, because since the city does own it, this is, as you all know, formerly the LAD property. As city council knows, we did not receive any original response or responses on the original RFP. The next steps is, obviously this will be a property that we'll be discussing in our joint meeting. And then as council directed, and if this continues to be the will and the wish of the council, is that after that we will reach out to developers that have experience in developing this type of property, because as you know, we do have some obligations to the property in terms of public use of it. And then also it is a gorgeous piece of property that has so much potential. So we'll be discussing this with council again at a further date, but I just wanted to include this simply because it is one of the pieces of property the city does currently own. Next slide, please. Seven 727 South Cockrell Hill Road. As you all know, this is the former Shamyville property. We wanted to give you an update, and then obviously this would be a piece of property that we would get direction from council on as well. The storage tanks have been remediated, so the environmentals have been cleaned up. So we're ready to move forward. It is, you can see down there the value. It is a green field, and there's really endless potential here as well, possibly a restaurant or a retail location. Again, that would be direction that we're looking for on this property from council in terms of moving forward, how you would like to see us move forward with it. Next slide, please. So two of the options for council to possibly consider, obviously there are a number of options, but two of them would be for city council to consider authorizing the city manager or his designee to discuss purchase opportunities with adjacent property owners and other interested parties. Obviously, that would be engaging. We would engage a real estate agent, as you all talked about earlier, to get that expertise. Obviously, all these properties, for those properties that council was interested in doing something like that, Obviously, we would want to get a current appraisal on them, and to Mr. Anderson's point, making sure that those are presented in the best light possible. And then also to reach out to potential buyers that have the same vision and the same interests that council is wanting on the individual properties. Option 2, the city can retain ownership of all these properties or a portion of them and market them through the Duncanville Urban Land Bank Authority that was established in resolution number 2015 012017. If the city council elects to utilize the DULBA, then a future action item would be needed to determine the administration of the authority, and then also the structure of it. Currently, it does fall within the Neighborhood Vitality Commission's purview, and after further discussion internally, there might be a better suited board, whether that be the DCEDC or however council would choose to select a group of individuals to manage that authority. In addition, if council wanted to go in this direction, the structure would have to be modified to include commercial development as well, because as it states right now, it strictly focuses, how Duncanville's is written, strictly focuses on residential. Obviously, those can focus on commercial as well. Next slide, please. So looking at this is where this might take a little, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mayor. I apologize.
Yeah, I just drop back that one slide if you would, Jessica.
Oh, yes, sir.
I just want to inform council, if you're looking at this last bullet here about the DULBA, as it could be pronounced, if you're not familiar with it, don't feel bad. It was enacted in 2015, as this resolution says, and doing some research on it, it has never been used.
And it's not been set up.
And where it came from and how it got set up is, something that we need to take a look at. Putting it under the Neighborhood Vitality Commission, I don't understand at all. So if we want to use the DULBA, what we would have to do first is go back and look at that resolution on how it was formulated, where it sits and what it's done, reformulate that, rewrite that thing, and then put it under probably where it properly would have belonged in the first place, was under the EDC. So I just want to give you some background on the DULBA to understand if we want to use that, we need to modify its existence with a whole new resolution and place it somewhere besides the Neighborhood Vitality Commission. So I think, Jessica, the best thing to do before we actually talk about option 2 is if everybody could be forwarded that resolution that established it, and look it over to decide if maybe the thing ought to be abolished. I don't know. I've read it in its entirety. And quite honestly, my opinion is just do away with the thing and let's go ahead and have EDC, work with this, with these properties and not use the DULBA. But I can't personally do that. We as a council have to make a decision to disestablish this authority. So I'm just putting that out there for y'all to think about. Are there any inputs? I said, Councilmember Jameson, I saw that you're nodding in agreement with that, but I think for everybody's benefit, it's like Councilmember, Anderson and Bear Cruz and others, we need to take a look at this thing and say, why is it even necessary? Can we go ahead and abolish it? Can we go ahead and operate the city for what we need to do with these properties without a commission and just allow the EDC to go ahead and do it properly? Councilmember Anderson, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? I don't see why you need this organization either. I mean, it's owned by the city. It's owned by the city. I don't know why you wouldn't I don't know why this land wouldn't be put directly under the city council and use the economic development director to market it. And so the land is just straight to the, you're straight with, who's got the land to sell and deal with. And they can, that way the council has to deal with it anyway. they can always bring EDC deals to the council on this land and would always be marketing the land.
Sure.
We would always be, looking for the right users for the land.
Well, yeah, I see your hand, City Attorney C. Hager. Just want to make one comment, and going back to what Mr. Anderson said. We could abolish the thing, getting like 3 of us could do it right now if we wanted to, but there are some that aren't familiar with it. So I think this option 2, we might as well just set it aside and take a look at option 1, and then have the council decide at a later meeting about what we're going to do with the DOLBA. But I think Jessica, you and your staff of 1, taking the option 1 and carrying it forward can probably take care of everything we need and not have to worry about option 2. Now, City Attorney Hager, I know I'm making some statements that you probably want to comment on.
Yeah, very briefly, Mayor and Council. One of the things you have to understand, if the city owns the property, there's only 2 ways that we can generally dispose of property, and that's by auction or by closed bid. And so unless we've got an economic development or commercial property, the residential properties might be hard for us to dispose of. That's why the Urban Land Bank Authority was formulated, because you have more options.
Please set this up.
The commercial property could be dealt with through economic development, where we could use that property as an incentive. But if we were just going to sell it, we would pretty much have to either do it in terms of an economic development agreement, or if it was residential property, it would have to go to bid unless there's another way of handling it through the Urban Land Bank. Brunswick Morton is the one that, in conjunction with working with Limebarger, is the one that brought forward that resolution. Now, as a policy of the city, obviously the council can agree to do away with it, but it was really formulated for the purpose of handling some of these residential properties where we'd have more of ability to negotiate a sale of that property. The commercial property would definitely, you would probably not want to put it in the land bank. So some of what you said, some of just alternative ways of looking at this, but we understand what the will of the council may be with regard to these options.
Well, going back, I think so that everybody is familiar with the Urban Land Bank Authority, that everybody get copies of this thing and read through it, and let's talk about the purpose and the existence of the DOLBA and how it may or may not be to our best advantage as a city to continue or discontinue. So is that a possibility, in terms of the legal propriety or the propriety of how we want to operate?
Yeah, you could agree to take the land bank and revoke that resolution, and then the city would own them, and then we would, with residential properties, you're pretty much left with auction and bid process to dispose of those properties.
Bob, are you familiar with the land bank? They have 5 criteria. There's only 5 criteria, and I don't remember them all, but the land bank originally, and I think there's been some changes. You do have to speak. That's why I talked to Pamela Johnson today. It used to be a lot could not have a structure on it, and she said there's been some changes in that. And it was for low-income housing. So you could put low-income housing, and that's the reason why I think it should be done away with, because some of these properties, that's not appropriate to put low-income housing in. And criteria for a land bank. You can watch the city council meeting, and it's not, it wasn't very, it was a terrible meeting, actually, because they were accusing Dallas of knocking down structures so that they could do it, and was illegal. There have been some changes in what you can do, but it's very, very structured and very strict. It's not a loosey-goosey deal. And you
Well,
have to go
I
through.
understand, and that was my point. That was really for residential purposes. And yes, you are correct. There is criteria, and it does have some limitations.
Big
but it also
limitations.
allows more latitude other than just auctioning it off. And if it's council's will to do away with it, yeah, that's fine. It was just something that was authorized by the legislature in, I want to say 13, and I know our purchasing agent at the time, Brunswick, Morton, brought that forward, and it was the will of that council to go ahead and do that. But you can certainly go a different direction if you want to, and we can do away with it. I was just giving you additional input for your consideration.
Well, my suggestion is, because there are council members who are not familiar with this resolution, that we dispense with option 2 for right now. And if Ms. James could forward that resolution to everybody so we can study it, put it on a separate agenda item for another city council meeting, and move on.
Yes, sir. Well,
Okay.
we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. These are just some thoughts for the council to consider in terms of possible or potential uses. Obviously, we are looking for direction from all of you. For Belmont Place, as you all stated earlier, obviously it's a beautiful piece of property, and there's a lot of opportunity there. Again, the reason why, and actually this property is probably one of those that has driven this the most, because we have gotten a lot of interest over the last few years on individuals interested in purchasing the property and have asked whether it was available or not. So, Mayor, how would you prefer to do this? Do you want to go back and look at each slide again, or do you just want to go through these, and what's the best way for you?
I'd rather get through this particular slide without
Very
having
good.
to go back.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, 923 Jungle Drive, just recapping again, that is a single family residential lot that could easily be marketed for that purpose. And it's a great infill lot opportunity. 805 West Wheatland Road and 302 South Venice Drive. Again, consider keeping those for a potential future park. 118 Jewel Lane, either keeping the property as Councilmember Anderson stated, or potentially seeing if one of the adjacent property owners was interested in it. 110 West Magnolia, we've already said that we'll be bringing that back to you at a future date for further discussion. 403 West Danieldale Rd, again, that's the little sliver piece of property that does have some challenges with the gas line and it being so small and unbuildable. So possibly an option there would be to speak with both adjacent property owners to see if either of them were interested in that property. 609 West Danieldale Road, possibly consider moving forward with marketing that property. Again, we will be, as I said before, this is allowed property. So we'll be discussing that. That's not for consideration this evening. We'll be bringing that back to you all. We've already talked about that at a future joint meeting. So we'll put that one aside as well. And then you have 727 South Cockrell Hill Road. And again, that's the former Shamyville property. So really looking at these, we're talking about 4 Belmont, 923 Jungle Drive, 118 Jewel Lane, 403 West Danieldale, and 727 South Cockrell Hill Road. And so at this point, that's really what, as the interim city manager said, that's really what we're wanting is direction from council in terms of how you would like us to proceed with these properties.
I think you've heard our comments and pretty well have our direction in terms of what our consensus is of the council, Ms. James. Mr. Frederickson, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just would, I think to reiterate, I think we've got the direction, especially on the residential properties. We'll just need to engage a real estate professional that can help us, probably do an RFP, that someone that can go out and help market those individual lots as Ms. James stated. The Wheatland Venice, I'm assuming council wants to keep that for the future park. I didn't hear any other discussion about not wanting to do that.
And we didn't get to discuss those, so we're just going over. I mean, are we just going to
Okay.
aside for now, or we didn't?
Yeah, I think the council needs to talk about all these, and we even need to talk about what real estate person we would like to use as a council
I don't.
instead of staff picking a real estate person.
I don't like this having to do this like social
No.
like this, where we're not getting time to discuss them and like look
No.
about them on a.
And we're given two options, and that's not right. But I thought, Mayor, that this was, that you were putting this on here because we were going to do away with the land bank, because that was put on in 2015 and left dangling, and they did not complete what they needed to do. You can't make the Vitality Committee, the land bank, and really the EDC doesn't qualify either. So according to what it is, and you have to go back through our tax attorney to set it up. You have to. So
The purpose
It was
of putting the DOLA in that agenda item was not to talk about its dissolution, but now that what I said, and I will reiterate, is there are council members not familiar with that resolution, and it is inappropriate for us to make any decisions on it without all the council members being fully intellectual.
we didn't even talk about it.
That's exactly why, because everybody is not familiar with it. So let's give everyone time to get familiar with it so that we can have an intelligent discussion about it at a subsequent meeting. Right now, I have some knowledge of it. You have some intimate knowledge, even more intimate than I. But everybody else needs to get up to speed on this. And that's why my suggestion was we table use of the DOLBA and anything to do with it, even how it's structured, where it sits, and how the language of it is, until everybody has an opportunity to review that resolution, and then we discuss it in detail in another city council meeting.
So we'll, per your instructions, we will forward that resolution to council and get input, and we can put that on for a future agenda. And I think to the point of Councilmember Anderson and Councilmember Jameson, we certainly can come back. I think to your point, this just gave you time to take a look at this and think about it and process, and certainly come back. I mean, we were throwing those two potentials. We're not suggesting those are the only options. This will give you more time to kind of think about it. We'll come back and have a more pointed discussion about each of these properties at a future date.
I think one more thing, and I know that this is important, and that's why I'm trying not to overstate things, but there's a couple of the properties, obviously 727 South Cockrell Hill, and there's some others that are obvious pads, platted pads that could and should probably be marketed for sale. It's kind of an more obvious one. It is to me. It may not be to the other council members. I'm in this business, but there's others that there may be opportunities, again, for us to decide how our city looks a little better, by using the power of owning this land. And this is one of the things, Mayor, that I keep talking about, where we're casting the vision of what we'd like to see, on Wheatland. If it's a park and we already can't pay for our infrastructure, and we're adding more infrastructure on without adding more economic development on, it may be a way we want to decide on whether we want. I love the parks. I love our parks. Don't get me wrong. I think our parks are wonderful, but can we afford another park, or do we need more taxable value on there? What's the balance? And so those are the things I think that we need to have a talk on, the vision of what we want to see moving forward. What is our philosophy about that? We add more. So anyway, that's why I think we need more time to sketch and strategize with these properties and the things that we have control over.
Well, your points were well taken in terms of the property for Jewel and Magnolia we're still looking at. And where was the other one that you mentioned that we ought to hang on to because of the potential for it and squaring out? I got looking at my notes. Where was that one? It was,
even deliver anything that doesn't get us any big value. If it doesn't get us big money coming in, and we could always give it to somebody who's trying to do a real cool real estate deal.
Yeah.
We could sell it to them cheap, or give it to them, or give it to economic development. But we may want to keep it as a chip, because we don't get anything by giving it away. I mean, we're going to get very little money.
Well, this is a briefing session, folks. We have to remember that. So what the staff is coming to us for was to get us up to speed, give us some information, and to go back and actually decide what to do with each individual property. They will come back to us, as I'm understanding Mr. Frederickson and Ms. James. They've gotten some initial direction from us, and they can proceed with that and then come back at a later date with some very specific stuff in terms of what they found out. You know, marketing Shameyville and marketing other properties, literally the one in Belmont and the one on Jungle. So what kind of results are they getting from that? How to do that? We can certainly take that up at another time, which would be appropriate and right for us to give the amount of time necessary to do that.
Let me add one thing for staff to look at as well, and that is, especially on the commercial properties, we also look and see if our new planning and zoning that we're going to be looking at soon would be affected by any of these commercial properties. And so, are they scheduled? Are they planned for the right thing anyway on the commercial properties? So I'd just like to make sure that planning and zoning has looked at these commercial properties as well.
So, Mr. Cooks, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing you say, are they in line with our comprehensive plan? Is that correct?
Yes, comprehensive plan, as well as, I know we are still working on new planning and zoning moving forward.
Yes, sir.
Will these commercial properties be impacted by this at all?
Okay, very good.
Okay, very good. Looking at the time, we are just about at 7.
I just want to say one thing. I really am not interested in Ms. James asking adjacent property owners or other people if they want to buy property. I think we need to market it and get top dollar, and not go around like, you want to buy this, you want to take this. I don't want to do that. And I never did want to do that. And then after talking to Pamela Johnson, and she said Dallas is taking a whole new look at it now that real estate's gone up and cities need money, and they're not doing it either. They're marketing and getting top dollar. They're not, we don't need to give it away. We don't need to be asking people, do they want to take it? No. We need to market and get top dollar.
Understood, and I believe in Miss James, when she went over Belmont and Jungle, she added into what our considerations were in our.
Well, I'm not talking about just Belmont and Jungle. I'm not talking about just Belmont and Jungle. I'm talking about every one of the properties. It needs to have a different attitude about it, like top dollar, that we can figure out how to clean it up, like Monty said, or whatever we need to do to market it to get top dollar. We're not needing to give it away, or somebody to take it off our hands.
So you're looking for the city to hire somebody to do that?
No. I think that we need to spend more time talking about these properties, and I think that we can decide as a council who we want the real estate group to be, and like Monty said, we need to go down these properties and decide when we have more time what we want to do with each one and how we want to approach it, and find a real estate company, and that we want to, if we want to do residential and commercial, or just residential, and the commercial something different. We just need to talk about it and look at it, and not just go down the list.
We understand that, and I will comment that it is not our job as a council to pick a real estate agent. Doing that is inappropriate.
That's not true. That is not true.
I'm sorry. I cannot agree with.
That's what you have to do when you have a land bank. You have to pick a real estate company when you have a land bank.
None of us as a council should individually go find somebody to talk to and then bring it to the council and say, this is the real estate agent that the city ought to be using.
And that's not
It ought
what
to be-
I
It ought
said.
to be put, well, that's the way I'm understanding you saying.
Well,
the
that's not what I said,
real
Barry.
estate agent, excuse me, I'm speaking. You may speak when I'm done.
Well, you butt in when I was speaking.
Ma'am, it is appropriate for us as a city council, if we want to choose a real estate agent, to have our procurement people, office, speak with responsible agents within the entire DFW Metroplex, have them come in and talk, and then make a suggestion to us in terms of these are the people that are interested in working with our city. And then we cut a contract with that particular real estate agent. But for us as a council, without any input from the market itself, is not appropriate for us to make those kind of procurement decisions in terms of hiring a marketing or real estate company to do so.
I didn't say hire a company. I said talk about what we wanted to do. And if you have a land bank, you have to hire a real estate company.
Exactly, and the hiring of that real estate company will ultimately be our decision as a council, but after we find out how many of those individuals are even willing to come to our city and do the work.
Oh,
That's my point.
real estate companies would be glad to.
Mayor, I'd say something.
I'm sorry. I was, again, I think where we'll go next is get back with council. I think help get guidance from council on an RFP going out and soliciting firms to come in for council to look at and make a decision on which would be the most appropriate company. I think that would be the next step, and we can visit with council and get your direction at a future date regarding the properties.
Thank you. Mr. McBurnett?
Thank you, Mayor. Simply, I want to say is that, we're the ones that kind of brought this issue forth and as a council. And yes, this is a briefing, and I think we've just gotten off topic on this thing. And we have a meeting to run. I think we need to do it.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I don't understand that, because I asked a minute ago about that, and we were being asked to decide to sell some things. That's not what happened, Don. That's not what happened. We were being asked to decide to sell some things. And I think before we even have a real estate company come in, we as a council ought to get together and let's talk about what do we see what do we want to see with this stuff, so we know what kind of real estate agent or what kind of designer or what kind of person to hire. I think we need to have our heads together on what we think so we can instruct staff properly. I don't think it's staff mistake here tonight or anything. I'm not blaming the staff or anything, but we need to look at this stuff and decide what direction we want it to go. Somebody at the top has to do that.
And that's what I said earlier. This is a briefing session, and we're not at this point to start giving direction as a council for these properties. Each of these properties needs to be discussed as an agenda item, not each as an agenda item, but these properties need to be discussed as an agenda item for the council to make firm decisions on how to direct staff to go for future actions on this thing. This is not the time to do that. And that's what I said earlier. We need to come back with these recommendations for each of these properties, and so staff can understand exactly what we want to do as a council, and taking into consideration, as Monty said, some of these properties we just need to hang on to for the future. And that's how we need to take a deeper look at these things and get more familiarity with them. There's too much at stake, especially looking at the DCAD values of some of these properties. Some of these properties are pushing over $250,000 in DCAD in value. And it's certainly now not the time to be talking about those kind of properties in a briefing session and giving direction when we can't take a vote. And that's what we need to do. We as a council need to vote on actions on each of these lines so that staff understands exactly what to do. And that's why I'm saying that's where I believe I understand if I'm articulating this well enough for Mr. City Manager and for our Economic Developer Director, are we understanding each other now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We'll come back to council to get more specificity on each of these properties and how to move forward with them.
Specificity, that's the word. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Taking a look at the timestamp, we're at 7:00 something or other, 7:04, and we do have an executive session. How long do we believe executive session will take? Any estimation?
Mayor, I don't think it'll last very long. We're just providing an update of where we are with 2 legal actions. I think we can get out of that fairly quick, don't you, Bob?
Yes, yes. It's something you charged us with doing at the end of June, and we've made some progress towards those things, and we just wanted to update council. I don't believe there'll be any decisions that need to be made or action taken.
Okay, so let's go ahead and recess our briefing session. The timestamp on that is 7:05 exactly. If you all would log out and log back in the executive session through that link, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Mayor Gordon, can you read the caption, please?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So belay that 7:05 timestamp. Executive session. City Council shall convene into closed executive session pursuant to section 550.71 of the Texas Government Code to seek legal advice from the city attorney about pending litigation and claims in the following manners. 1, City of Duncanville versus Rosa Juanita et al. Clause number DC-20-10002, District Court of Dallas County, Texas. Item number 2, Eon Reality Agreements and Lease. So we are recessing our briefing session at 7:06. Thank you. I see that all of our city council members are here except Mr. McBurnett. I don't see your face. Where you are.
I am here, Mayor.
There you are. Okay, there you are.
Oh, not seeing my face.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Who am I missing? Harvey. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Mr. Cooks.
There you are. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
We're missing Councilmember Cooks.
Okay, I keep coming up with 6. Yeah, there we go.
Is Councilmember Harvey here?
Yes, he is.
I haven't seen.
Well, he's there's his hand.
Where are you, Patrick?
He's captive of his screen. Can you tilt that thing down just a little bit, Patrick, so we can see your face, or do you intend not to? Ah, there's your face. Okay, thank you.
What's it?
Missing Mr. Cooks.
How come I don't see Patrick?
I see him.
Well, Patrick, how come I can't see you? I can't hear you either.
He is muted, but his face is there.
I can't find him.
Where's your face?
Yeah.
Well, we haven't seen you in so long. We have to make sure you're really there.
Okay.
Please
Mayor,
speak.
Councilmember Cooks is having an error on his computer right now, so he's trying to log in.
We will wait for him to come on.
I see you. Hey, Patrick.
Hey, everybody hear me?
Yeah.
All righty then.
You've been so quiet.
I'm negotiating with my employer to get paid by the word. I'm not being paid to speak.
Ah.
We got to renegotiate. There's Mark Cooks.
All right, we are all back and present. So I'm calling to order the regular session of our city council meeting on August 4th, 2020. And the timestamp on calling to order is 7:23. And next item on our agenda is the invocation. Mr. McBurnett, would you please do our invocation for us? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the blessings of the day. We thank you for the grace that you provided us. Please have us be open. Please have us be willing, and please guide us and lead us to do your work. Father, we thank you for your son and the gift provided. We ask this in his name. Amen.
Amen. If you would please rise for the pledges to our flags. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 1, our agenda, our reports. The first one is the mayor's report. I have 2 brief subjects. First of all, our latest numbers in terms of what was put out by the county. Today, we now have 855 positive cases in our city. And if you've been watching the county numbers are in decline. Hospitalizations are still a significant issue. So we still continue. I emphatically ask compliance with all of our citizens to wear masks when you go out, if you have to go out, and to maintain social distancing, and do everything you possibly can to keep yourself safe and well. The second item I want to bring up is some sad news, and it is the passing of one of our Duncanville firefighters. And I'll read to you what we received. It's great sadness that we are informed of the passing of fire engineer Dan Kendall with the Duncanville Fire Department. On Friday, July 31st of this year, Dan passed away peacefully at home with his family by his side after fighting a courageous 14-month battle with colon cancer. Dan started with the city of Duncanville on September 8th, 2008. He was the driver engineer on June 25th, 2018. Funeral services for Dan will be held at First Baptist Church of Rockwall in Rockwall on Thursday, August 6th at 2 p.m. So please keep Mr. Kendall's family in your thoughts and prayers, and for all of our first responders and firefighters and those friends that Dan had. I'm sure this is a very tough time of tragedy and sadness for them. So we're very, very sorry for the Kendall family. Any council members' reports? Mr. McBurnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Mine's just real quick. Always a reminder of the census. You can even do it with a mask on and don't have to have anyone else around you. But we need people to do census and complete it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, a couple of months ago or so when COVID got started, you asked Councilmember Cooks and I to lead a group made up of small local businesses. And we've been doing that every couple of weeks. And I wanted just to let you know a couple of things as a result of that. And one of the first things is with Mr. Ramey from Public Works came to meet with us because we were having trouble with banners and signs and murals. And there's a lot of things that there was complaints from small business people. They were complaining that we were too hard. The city was too hard on these things. Well, come to find out, our city has some very progressive, really cool, good good ordinances on these signs where you can like paint a mural on the side of your building. You can actually put banners on the back of your building right now. You can actually put sandwich boards up. There was a host of things that the city is very, in my opinion, very progressive on. And we learned that. It was like really, and also Councilman Bear Cruz attended most of our meetings too. But that's one thing that we learned. So that was, then secondly, the group asked the city council, I'm reading tonight what they're asking the city council for a future, is they want the city to find a way to connect all of our local businesses with our local citizens through some kind of app or some kind of electronic to connect all of our businesses, again, where you can easily get on your phone and somehow get every business in town. And then also there are ways, and we want to challenge the staff with this, of actually catching traffic that even comes through town, down our freeways, to know what we've got when you're going down the freeway, that you would get those notices. And then secondly, there was three things. That was the first thing. And secondly, they're asking that, and I think the city, I don't know the policy on this and want to find out, but they would like to ask the city to purchasing all goods that they would first try their best to purchase from local Duncanville businesses, if any way is possible. And I think we do that some, I'm not sure, but that's just something they're asking. And third was an educational guide on some kind of device of how to do business, how do small businesses, how to do business in this town. One of the things that's hard in getting a certificate of occupancy or getting a health permit or going through the different things of basically maybe an easy film or something. We're not trying to solve the problem, just make these recommendations. And I'm speaking from experience, I thought that was a really, really good one. Just having an easy tutorial of how to do business in town. And so, Mayor, from this group, this is my report back to you on what the small businesses. We had 12 or 13 small businesses chosen by each of us. We kind of spread it up that made these recommendations. And with that, Councilman Cook, did I forget anything?
No, I'm still, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. No, I don't have anything else, Monty. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for reporting.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Monty, and Councilmember Cooks and Mr. Mayor Bear Cruz for participating as well. Any other council members' reports? Okay, seeing none. City Manager's report.
I have nothing to report, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 2, we do not have any proclamations or presentations. Moving on to item number 3, citizen input. We do have some citizen input. So pursuant to section 551.007 of the Texas Government Code, any member of the public has the opportunity to address the city council concerning any matter of public business or any posted agenda item. However, the act prohibits the city council from deliberating any issues not on the agenda, and such non-agenda issues may be referred to city staff for research and any future action. All persons addressing are subject to council adopted rules and limitations permitted by law. Public comments that have been received prior to 4 o'clock, and they are therefore in compliance with what we've asked for. And I will read these into the record at this point. City Secretary will set a 2-minute time limit, and I hope, let's see. A couple of them are a little lengthy. I hope I get them in within 2 minutes. The first one is from a Crystal Dabney. Dear City Council members, I'm a resident of Duncanville for over 20 years in City Council District 4. It was recently brought to my attention and confirmed by the Planning and Zoning Department that the vacant land on the southwest corner of Danieldale and Cedar Hill Road is being purchased. It is stated for a 42 parking space retail dollar store, and that is in quotation marks. I have met with over a dozen residents and local businesses in the area who all expressed total opposition to the proposed project. Development in our city is welcome, but it has to be appropriate for the surrounding area and benefit the residents. With an array of full-service grocers in Duncanville and surrounding cities, we are not in a food desert, quote unquote, while dollar stores are ubiquitous in our city. Allowing any additional business of this type will yield no value to the Penn Springs neighborhood and will be a detriment to this community. It is very important that our community has access to healthy food options at affordable cost. Dollar stores market affordability, but they often sell products in smaller quantities to keep a low price tag and draw in cash-strapped customers. And when comparing per ounce prices to a traditional grocery store, dollar store customers tend to pay more. They do nothing to promote food sovereignty and are typically designed to incentivize the purchase of high-calorie, highly processed foods, lacking fresh produce and healthy nutritional options. The proposed project will bring increased traffic and endanger the accessibility to the community, making a busy area more congested and unsafe for everyone, especially the adjacent school children. These retail businesses do not complement the character of the neighborhood and will clash with our traditional aesthetics. This project lacks support of the residents and make it possible for independent local retailers from Duncanville to thrive. For these reasons and more, I urge you to please reconsider the proposed project plans. By the way, I'm reading these in the timestamp order that they were received. This one was been phoned in by Miss Nancy Bell. Nancy Bell is not in favor of item 4B, interlocal agreement by and between the city of Duncanville, Duncanville, Texas, Duncanville, and the city of Cedar Hill, Texas, Cedar Hill, for services related to the Green Ribbon Landscape Project on US 67. Comment 3 is from a Miss Patricia Ebert at 115 South Greenstone Lane. I support selling city-owned property ASAP. We need the money to pay the $500,000 for the 2 gateway monuments, plus additional monies for the consultants, Pacheco Koch, that are detailed in tonight's agenda item 4B. But 609 West Danieldale on the property list on page 5 of 154 is the Ladd property, I believe. That 42 acres has been gifted to us as a park/greenbelt. The land acreage is not for sale. The next one I have is from, there's no name. It is strictly a email address, Pathaake. Patake, I would have to take that. And this is written.
Hockey, Pat Hockey.
Oh,
I recognize it. I recognize her name.
Okay, Pat Hockey. Okay, thank you. It would seem to me that this would be an announcement. I'm sorry, since she's referencing the subject. The subject is Cedar Hill Landmark, ENTR. It would seem to me that this would be an encroachment on Duncanville property. And why would that even be considered? There is ample space available to them within their boundaries. I would not be in favor of this. And the final citizen comment. This is from Misty Bain. In the background information for the briefing relative to the Duncanville Land Bank, the background states, the following properties were obtained by the city of Duncanville through previous tax foreclosures that did not sell at the Dallas County Sheriff's sale. Therefore, the city is having to maintain these lots but are not receiving property taxes on them. Some of these lots have development challenges that will be addressed during the meeting. 609 West Danieldale is listed as one of those properties among many others. I believe this is the Ladd land that was gifted to the city for specific usages, none of which include selling for profit. This property was not a tax foreclosure, as the background falsely leads people to believe. If the Ladd family intended for the land to be sold for profit, they would not have donated it to the citizens with specific deed restrictions relative to its development for only a handful of specific purposes. I am opposed to the Duncanville Land Bank and don't believe it should have ever been approved as a resolution by the council. Approval of the resolution for a land bank should be rescinded. City government should not be in the business of real estate. Properties received in tax foreclosure should be subsequently sold to whomever will pay the most money. At times we are experiencing, at times like we are, reading it exactly, at times like we are experiencing, we need that money in our budget. With the reduced sales tax intake in Duncanville and the possibility of increasing property taxes to fill some sort of budget shortfall, we should be looking to sell all the tax foreclosed properties for profit to help offset budget shortfalls to help prevent increases to the citizens' taxes. Citizens are opposed to an increase in their property tax and believe that the city should make more effort to reduce budgetary expenses before asking them for more money. It's my understanding that many cities have been required to cut as much as 11% of their total staffing to balance out their budget. I believe the last report I read stated that we had furloughed or possibly laid off only 5 employees. This is true, even when the city offices were mostly shuttered and all of the rec centers, field house, senior center, library, etc.
2 minutes.
closed. Okay. All right. That, I believe, as a written document would be available if anybody wants to read. There's one more paragraph that goes along with that. Okay, thank you to our citizens for those inputs, and city staff has taken note as well as council on those concerns. We're now moving on to item number 4, which is the consent agenda. Before getting into the consent agenda, please make a note that item 4B has been moved from consent agenda to items for individual consideration. So the city secretary, would you please read the consent agenda items into the record?
Item 4A, consider a resolution confirming the interim city manager's appointment of Nigel Robertson as a member of the Duncanville Civil Service Commission, filling the vacancy of former Commissioner Curtis Smith through October 31st, 2021. 4C, consider a resolution approving the proposal for city-paid employee and retiree medical and prescription plan with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas for a 1-year agreement. 4D, consider a resolution authorizing an amendment to Resolution 2020-004 approved on January 21st, 2020 for an increase in the amount of $30,001 at the approved rate for a new annual amount up to $102,501 with the Visiting Nurse Association using interlocal cooperative contract with the City of Grand Prairie, contract number 17124 for the Senior Meal Program Service. 4E, receive the newly required certification of additional sales and use tax to pay debt service required under SB 2.
Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent item agendas.
Mayor, I'd like to make the motion to approve. Councilman McBurnett.
Thank you. Is there a second, please? Mr. Cooks, I saw your hand go up. We have a second from Councilmember Cooks. This is a roll call vote. City Secretary.
Councilmember Veracruz, 4 are against.
4.
Mayor Pro Tem McBurnett, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Anderson, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Cooks, 4 are against.
4.
Councilmember Jameson, 4 are against.
4.
At-large Councilmember Harvey, 4 are against.
4.
Mayor Gordon, 4 are against.
4. Thank you, City Council. The motion is unanimously approved. Going on to item number 5, items for individual consideration. I think what we'll do is take item 4B from the item from consent that Councilmember Jameson has asked to be moved from consent to individual consideration. So I will go ahead and read this as we normally do with items for individual consideration. And I'm reading from the consent agenda, item 4B. Consider a resolution approving the terms and conditions of the interlocal agreement by and between the City of Duncanville, Texas, Duncanville, and the City of Cedar Hill, Texas, Cedar Hill, for services related to the Green Ribbon Landscape Project on US 67. Councilmember Jameson, you asked this to be moved, so I would ask you to open it, please. Thank you.
Yes, the part that I take issue with is the item number 4B is requesting that we enter into an agreement with Cedar Hill along US 67 to capture Duncanville's permission to allow Cedar Hill's entry monument within Duncanville city limits and allow Cedar Hill to access and maintain their monument and landscaping. And then they go on in the resolution, and I'd like to know too, did our city attorney write this resolution or did theirs? And resolution number 2020-063 Exhibit A, Article 2, construction of Cedar Hill Monument within the city of Duncanville, jurisdictional boundaries. The city of Duncanville grants the city of Cedar Hill revocable license to construct the city of Cedar Hill's landscape monument at Wintergreen Road within the city of Duncanville's jurisdictional boundaries at a mutually agreeable location. And you know, when Duncanville is 11.2 square miles and Cedar Hill is, I don't know, 3 or 4 times the size of Duncanville, I do not want Cedar Hill's entry monument to be within the city of Duncanville. I talked to the city manager about it, Paul, and he said, well, it was something that they had talked about and agreed to all along. I said, we didn't talk about it because I would never have agreed to that. And then he said something about TxDOT, and I said, no, TxDOT has no say. They have jurisdiction only on the access. And then he said that, well, it had the correct elevation. And, you know, not our problem. They can elevate their sign however they want to do it within their city boundaries. I do not think it's appropriate. I don't think the citizens of Duncanville, in fact, would want that. And so I went on, though, to make sure that there was no misunderstanding about TxDOT. So I called State Representative Yvonne Davis, and she said, why in the world would you do that? And I said, I don't know. I don't want to do that. And she said, let me call TxDOT and I will call you back. And I said, thank you. And she did. And when she called back, she said TxDOT was very clear. They had nothing to do with that was the staff of Duncanville and the staff of Cedar Hill, that they had nothing to do with where we put our entry monuments. And I think it's inappropriate. And we didn't get anything for on our part for doing that. But I just really take issue with, if this is our entry monument, we have ours, they have theirs, it needs to be within their city limits, not in ours. And I don't think, if you looked at other cities, I think the example I used was Southlake and Keller. Do you think Southlake would say, okay, to Keller, they could put their entry monument in their city? Don't think so. Take Richardson and Plano, same thing. No, you just don't do that. And I don't know when they talked about it, but we were not privy to that discussion. It never showed up before. And I think it's inappropriate, and we should not be allowing Cedar Hill to put their entry monument for their city in Duncanville city limits.
Okay. Mr. Frederickson, would you like to respond to that, please?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of recontext some of the statements and questions, but what I would actually like to do is have our Director of Public Works. I asked him to put some slides together that showed the council the timeline. We've had discussions. This has been a project that's been ongoing even before I got here, since 2017, where we've had a cooperative arrangement with the City of Cedar Hill and Duncanville, where we've pursued the Green Ribbon grant monies for the US 67 widening project. And so that's not only including landscape improvements, it's also included monument sign improvements. And along the way, what we'll show is that we have been communicating that the essence of, if you will, of that cooperative arrangement. When I talked about TxDOT, for example, I mentioned that it was right away. Councilmember Jameson is correct. TxDOT didn't dictate where the signs would go, but as part of their Green Ribbon project, they would require the ILA between Cedar Hill and Duncanville. And what I explained was that it was in their right of way, even though it is within the city limits. Part of the idea is that is a cooperative arrangement with Cedar Hill and Duncanville to provide for the landscaping, not only along the corridor and specifically at this location, but on the other side when we also received an additional $1 million for the gateway on the north part of the Duncanville entryway. And then, of course, Cedar Hill got their grant monies for their southern gateway. But let me ask Mr. Ramey to present real quick just kind of where these locations are to put it in context. Greg, if you can go through the slides real quick.
Yes, sir. Next slide, please. So again, this is just the resolution that is for consideration right now. Next slide, please. So again, here's just to summarize the ILA and its the highlights. Again, as Mr. Frederickson said, this project has been a joint effort between us and Cedar Hill since 2017. The Cedar Hill is taking the lead on the procurement action for this entire contract after TxDOT said it would have to go local let. Again, both of us are doing the construction quality assurance. They're going to be doing managing the construction contract and the invoicing. And as we talked about, yes, Duncanville, the way when we get some later slides, the gateway is a shared gateway where Duncanville takes care of the east side and Cedar Hill maintains the west side, which is in the city of Duncanville city limits, but and I'll show you some more clarity on where the Cedar Hill city limits are. And then we do have separate water and electric meters. Next slide. So here's the timeline. So back in June 2017 was an initial partnership with Cedar Hill for a US 67 landscape master plan for the entire corridor of both cities for Green Ribbon grant funds. And again, this was all tied to the US 67 widening project that TxDOT was at the time getting ready to undertake. At the time, the corridors, when TxDOT's in the area and they're doing the corridor or any work on their interstates, that is usually the best time to make the argument or make to be the most competitive for Green Ribbon grants. And again, at the time of the initial partnership, it was we jointly funded the original master plan with Pacheco Coke, and we've gone through from there. As you see in September 2017, TxDOT awarded $486,000 in Green Ribbon funds, and in their letter to us, it was joint to Duncanville and Cedar Hill for the gateway at Wintergreen Road. It had always been the vision for that that gateway to be something that was joint between both cities. Given that we still had other gateways that we wanted to fund, in February of 2018, we awarded the contract to go to the 100% design so that we could again compete for the Green Ribbon funds to complete the gateway at Cockrell Hill. So on 15 May, we did present the 6% design to council for their input. And at that time, we shared that the gateway north of Wintergreen Road was part of the slide presentation. And I'll show you some of those extracts. On 31 July, we got awarded the $1 million in Green Ribbon funds so that we could do the Cockrell Hill Gateway. And then at our meeting with TxDOT on August 15th, TxDOT said, we don't have the ability to manage and deal with this project at our level. And so they pushed this project down to Duncanville and Cedar Hill to execute. Pacheco Coke, again, we've been working, both of us have been working, Cedar Hill and Duncanville have been working with Pacheco Coke on, again, the intent has always been a corridor that had some commonality, some continuity throughout the corridor. And then November 19 is when we came to you for the landscape icon and the approval of the final landscaping plan. And again, there was no change in the location of the gateway at that time. And then finally, in June 2nd, we brought the landscape maintenance agreement for US 67. And in the staff report, we talked about this ILA would be coming to you and described that, the role that Cedar Hill would be doing in terms of the procurement and project, as well as the long-term maintenance. Next slide, please. So again, this was from the 15 May 2018 briefing. As you see, those were the 4 gateways at the time that we were looking at: the Cockrell Hill Gateway, the Danieldale area of concentration, and Main Street area of concentration. And at the time in May 15, the only money that we had received in terms of grant from TxDOT was to have a joint project with Cedar Hill and vicinity of Wintergreen. We have not, never were able to get any funding for the area of concentration at Danieldale and Main Street. Those we will have to pursue in the future if desired. But we did, through follow-on grant submission, after we had our full designs, we did get the funding for the $1 million at Cockrell Hill. Next slide. So again, this was what was presented at Cockrell Hill. Now, I just do want to make one caveat that these are 15 May 2018 briefings. When we submitted our final drawings, or Pacheco Coke submitted their final drawings to TxDOT several months ago for their review, TxDOT made a few tweaks to that design, mainly as it pertained to plantings on the median and making sure that, again, just some massaging to meet some of their requirements. Next slide, please. And so this was the gateway at Wintergreen Road. And so you see the box, I mean, you have to forgive me with the PowerPoint carrying over, but it said, there's a Cedar Hill enhancement area. As you see, these were handouts that were provided to council at the meeting, so an 11/17. What I do want to note on this picture, if you just don't mind, again, the orientation of this, the north is actually toward the right of the drawing. But if you look at plan to the top of that boxed in area for Cedar Hill, that is Cedar Hill. The only part that is Duncanville is actually the part that's TxDOT right-of-way that goes down across the service road. So yes, Duncanville city limit is actually basically where the service road ends as you go on the north end side. So all of that, that property does abut Cedar Hill. Just for some more clarity. Next slide, please. And so again, these were some additional handouts. I just want to highlight handout 8, which showed just another blow up of our icon, and as well as the Cedar Hill icon at this location. And I know we've had several conversations because we had always been mindful of what our monuments look like relative to Cedar Hills. Next slide, please. So again, this is our recommendation was that we pursue the ILA. Again, we've been, from a staff perspective, we've been operating under the understanding that this has always been a joint project between the two cities for cooperation, that the Wintergreen Road area was always going to be a gateway that was shared and included by both cities. The bottom line is that based on the terrain, Wintergreen Road is an underpass to US 67. And so we couldn't put anything that split right at that bridge, because frankly, everything would be down below eye of sight. You'd be on the bridge going into Cedar Hill, and any improvements would be not visible. And so we had conversations, as you saw on the May 8, 2018 slides, that we pushed that into Duncanville about 1,300 feet, a quarter mile, again, within TxDOT's right of way, so that we could facilitate a joint gateway that would help both cities. That was, again, the base guidance that I was operating under when I got here in 31 July, beginning of August. That was something that I was continuing to operate under in terms of my understanding of council's intent all the way through this process until tonight, was that we were hoping to maintain and achieve the vision of the shared corridor that we've had basically since 2017. Next slide, please. So subject to your questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ramey. We've heard Ms. Jameson's concerns. What I'd like to do is go around council, and well, I do have one question, and then we'll go around council's table and just get input from everybody. Looking at that one slide, I think it was slide 5, in terms of where we would be located, where that thing would be located. Is there some possibility? There you go. Is there, okay, the sign that we're talking about is that green bullet down there at the bottom, right?
No, sir. On this slide here, this was a very, at the beginning of the conversation, was just to highlight where the vicinity of where our gateways would be going. That's the only purpose of this slide, and to highlight again that we did have the money for that one gateway, was an FY18 grant for a joint project with Cedar Hill in vicinity of Wintergreen.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask a very subjective question, and there's probably not a specific objective answer to it. Is there a possibility, because of the location of this Cedar Hill Gateway sign, that citizens driving down 67 would believe that Costco is actually in Cedar Hill and not Duncanville?
Can we go to, Tracy, can you go to a few more slides, please? Okay. Okay, if you want to barely, I guess if you're looking, if you see like the 435 foot for the length,
yep,
where Costco is. And so, and what's on the other side of the Cedar Hill, where it's River Oaks Road? Again, all of that is Cedar Hill. in terms of their property. So that's that sand and aggregate store, and then some vacant lots.
Okay, I got it. Okay.
Technically, where
Sand.
their sign is, if you were to go and see that sign and look to your right as you're going south, you are looking at Cedar Hill. As you go up to Duncanville, even though as soon as you cross under that, or as soon as you go over Wintergreen and you look to the right, that's Duncanville. So again, I mean, you're right. It is that little part, and again, it's just the way the boundaries are drawn. Cedar Hill property is actually just to the top of that dash line and all the way down. That's the bottom line. So yes, it is in Duncanville. That is true. But the reality is it abuts Cedar Hill properties. And again, the whole idea with this whole process was a joint endeavor with Cedar Hill at this gateway.
Okay.
And in fact, through the corridor. That was the intent of the master plan, and so that we had, again, some level of continuity through the corridor, which again was something that TxDOT made it attractive to TxDOT as well.
Okay.
No, they said that's not true. They had nothing to do with it. In fact, they asked me if I wanted their email.
I concur that TxDOT did not specify this location. That is absolutely true. Okay, this location was is, you know, in terms of TxDOT was like, well, put it wherever you want. You know, we have some particular criteria in terms of making sure that, you know, they put it somewhere that makes sense and is safe, and, you know, those kinds of things. But this exactly location was informed by the topography of the area, so that, you know, the whole, you know, when you're looking at the entire gateway, when you're going, you know, again, when you're going north, the Cedar Hill Cedar Hills icon is behind a bunch of trees. So as you're going north, you know, you see a bunch of beautiful landscape as you enter into Duncanville. And you're right, as you're going south, you see a bunch of beautiful landscape as you go into Cedar Hill. And you're right, TxDOT didn't pick this location. The topography sort of said, this is where it makes sense. And the, you know, the award letter from TxDOT was to the Cedar Hill and Duncanville were jointly awarded that 486. So,
What I'd like to do, as I said, I'd like to go around the table and get some thoughts from all the city council members. So I'll go by district. Mr. Vera Cruz, what are your thoughts?
First of all, appreciate Mr. Ramey presenting for us. And from what I can see, this has been in place for quite some time, and I have no problem with it, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember McBurnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess the question, and it came up to what you were saying too, is there going to be any confusion? And I guess that's a question for Greg. How is it going to be differentiated?
So again, for confusion, as you are going south into Cedar Hill has their own monument that is distinct from ours, of course. And I think we've shown you that in several of the briefings. And so as you're coming south, you see this Cedar Hill sign. And again, you look off to the right, you see the Cedar Hill sign, and you see Cedar Hill property. Again, the only thing that's in Duncanville on the right hand, on the west hand side of the road, is the service road and these things. And then again, this is a quarter of a mile. So, and then 15 seconds later, they're in Duncanville or in Cedar Hill. because they go under, as soon as they go over, hit the bridge, they're in Cedar Hill. As you're going north, again, technically the city limit is when you go up the bridge and you go across Wintergreen at that location. On the right-hand side is Duncanville. Our sign would be on Duncanville. We have our own, unique sign, which council approved back in November, once we got the new logo. And you see Costco, you see Papa's, you see that little gas station, those out parcels for future development. That's all Duncanville. So I don't know how else to do that. Again, there's our city limit makes a zigzag at that location, as you can see on that slide 5 where that zigzag is.
So, Don?
I guess there's no other alternative, is there? I mean,
Come on.
Greg, is there a way that Cedar Hill's monument can be in Cedar Hill?
Well, I will be perfectly honest, sir. I don't know. And the reason why I say that is because for the last 3 years, the understanding that I was operating under through actions, from June right before I got here, through different conversations and briefing sessions and everything else, this has always been a joint endeavor. And so it was, okay, we know we want it in vicinity of Wintergreen because that's our city limit. Where does the go? We would have to go back, split the project, tell them, too bad, move your stuff down to the south, find your own spot. And then we have, our planning on one side, and then there's grass on the other. And then they go down on their side and they have whatever they're gonna have.
That's what cities do.
Don, do you have any other questions or thoughts?
Not at this time, sir.
All right, Monty, Mr. Anderson?
Mr. Ramey, I don't ever remember hearing anything about this before about it being, I didn't, looking at it, I didn't know it was in one city or another. I was just thinking about, I'm trying to think this through because it is an odd area. It is odd because of both cities on both sides. But, when you go into Louisiana from Texas, you cross over the border a little ways before they say, welcome to Louisiana. So you kind of make sure you're in Louisiana all the way. And the same thing when you cross over Texas, you kind of get past it a little bit and then you're in Texas. So you're trying to line these up in the design. So, I remember very little on the sign. I know we looked at it. I know we talked about it, but so the two signs are the same. They're right in the same line. You want it to be in line with each other. Is that what you're trying to do?
Both of the signs are different. They have their own branding, their own signs. We have our own branding, our own signs.
Location. I'm talking about the location.
The location is.
Are they across from each other? Is that why
they're? I would say roughly across from each other. Yes, sir. If there's anything, there's a little bit of an offset.
So I guess, I don't know, it seems kind of strange, something in another city like that. It just seems a little bit strange to me. So I don't know what to.
I totally understand. And again, I'm the thing again that, I'm an Army guy. And so, my marching orders, I'm picking up from, 3 years ago was, hey, we're working on this together as a team. We're paying for this landscape maintenance, landscape master plan as a joint endeavor between two cities. Our initial submission in where we got the 486 was done jointly by Pacheco Coke. it's been contemplated as a joint gateway to my, as far as when I was operating under for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
That's really the bottom line. And again, you're right. Technically, it is in Duncanville, but it's it is TxDOT right of way is what we're talking about at the end of the day.
Hey, Mr. Anderson, any other thoughts?
No, not right now. I can't think of what they'd be right now. I just kind of don't know what to say right now.
Okay, Mr. Cooks? You're muted.
Ramy, thank you for giving us a presentation. I guess I really want to start out and ask, I think one of the questions I just heard someone else ask is, how could you move the sign back to the Cedar Hill property line? Is there a possible way you can move it back? Well, you know what? I'm sorry.
I can't speak to that. I don't know anything about
Right.
Cedar Hill.
Hold on a second, Raymond. You're right. That is not our issue. Have you talked with Cedar Hill to make them aware what they could do to move that sign back on their property line?
I have not. I did not know that we had any friction on this until tonight.
Okay, thank you. But then, okay, so that tells me that there's no solution right now from your end through Cedar Hill to move it back to a preferred spot, even in their own city. We may even say that their council may be thinking the same thing. Their council may be asking them questions, or may be like us and don't know that it was going to be on another city's property line.
Their council already approved it.
They approved it, and we also approved it, Randy.
No, their council approved.
No, they want us to prove it tonight.
July.
But we approved it because we've seen these drawings, we've seen everything you brought to us, but never once do I recall where it was going to be stationed, because I would have remembered that for sure.
Me too.
So that's the only issue I'm just saying for sure. So it could be, I don't know, that they did the same thing. They just thought it was in the point of Cedar Hill. My other question is, I think what you just said was the partnership with Cedar Hill and Duncanville. That was for grant funding, not necessarily for property line.
That's right.
And so when you think about this, I'm thinking about funding. I'm thinking about that type of partnership, not saying the other. Then let me give you a residential, you're in public works. Let me give you just a thought, just really quick. If a citizen came to us and wanted to put their fence on just a little bit over on somebody else's property line, would we allow that?
That's right. No.
So
would we allow it?
I'm thinking no, because what I've heard in the past. And so, as much as I like Cedar Hill, I mean, they're all friends and we're all partners, I think, to some other comments, it's really hard for me to say place it in the right spot. I would prefer and hope that somebody would go back to Cedar Hill and ask them to look at another spot.
Can I interject one comment, Mayor, and characterize Councilmember Cooks, that it wasn't just a joint a partnership just to get grant funding. It was also a joint partnership in designing the landscaping. I think that's important to point out since the beginning, that we've been working with Cedar Hill and both not just the grant, but also in the landscaping and this very issue. To Greg's point, that this has been the.
Thank you for Assistant City Manager for bringing that up. However, still to my point is that it was not about us putting the monument on a Duncanville property line. That's my point. And so, when you talk about, I know they're taking the lead in doing the financing, or we're having to pay them or something. Are we having to do any invoicing? Are they charging us for invoicing at all?
No, they are doing the procurement, in terms of there's because even though this is a local let, we have to go follow all the federal rules, because at the end of the day, this is a federal funding.
Right.
And Cedar Hill has stepped up and said, hey, you know, we'll do this. We'll put it out on the street. We'll go get the, you know, do the procurement process that meets the TxDOT standards. Our money is sitting at TxDOT. Our money for Cockrell Hill, our money for, you know, our portion of Wintergreen is sitting with TxDOT. When the contractor is hired and they do work, they'll, you know, we will check the work that's in Duncanville, you know, at Cockrell Hill, and then at our, you know, where we put stuff at Wintergreen, and they're going to do the same for their land. And then that invoice says, you know, in month A, you know, I did $100,000 worth of work in Duncanville for Duncanville, and I did $100,000 worth of work for Cedar Hill. You owe me 200 grand. Hill's going to cut that check for 200 grand to them, and then they're going to put in that file that entire invoice to TxDOT so they can get reimbursed that 200 grand. And we've been told it's like a 90-day turnaround between when you submit invoices and when you get paid by big TxDOT. So they're also volunteering to basically float $600,000, you know, up to probably waiting on invoices. They've been a partner through this, and again, I apologize if this was misleading. Since when I've been part of this project all the way through, and as we've come back to council in different times all the way through this, we've briefed, the landscape architect has briefed that this Wintergreen, the vision for this Wintergreen gateway has always been something that we shared.
Hey, right.
Again, went originally for that $486,000 grant was a joint submission.
Okay. Hey, Raymond, I don't want to go back and forth and challenge you on that at all. I just want to tell you that me sitting on council and heard this multiple times, not once have I heard this, or I would have said something to you. And so whether it's on your end, whether it's on somebody else's end, it doesn't matter for me at this point. This is my first time ever hearing it. And what I would suggest, without voting yet, what I would suggest is that somebody goes back to Cedar Hill and you guys have that friendly conversation that I know you guys will have and resolve it within the two cities, with one city being their monument in their city limits and the others being in the other city limits. That's all my comments.
Okay, gonna go to, we already know Councilmember Jameson's.
Well, I have something I want to say from what he said.
Okay.
One thing, I totally agree with Council Member Cooks. That's exactly right. All your PowerPoint, all that stuff, I was there, I heard it. We talked to the contractor. We asked him about the plans. We even asked him what plant Cedar Hill was going to have, and he didn't know. We never once talked about them putting their entry monument in Duncanville. Not ever, not ever, not ever. And so when this came up, it was a stunner. And TxDOT said, staff in Duncanville and staff in Cedar Hill did all this planning. We had nothing to do with it. They don't get involved in that. It's the cities who tell them what they're going to do. And
I agree.
So
We don't dispute that.
Them stepping up, we get this. City staff does get a benefit from that because the auditing, the paperwork, all the stuff that has to be kept up with, Cedar Hill has, I guess, agreed to do with what you worked out. That was your agreement that you worked out, but we didn't have anything to do with that. And so the citizens of Duncanville, though, they don't want Cedar Hill's entry monument in their city limits. And I don't think, oh, the other thing I was going to say is that I was told, and I'd like to clarify this, is Duncanville sign in Dallas's city limits? No? Okay, I thought that's what you told me, Paul.
No, what I've suggested is it could happen, that those things can happen, but that's a mischaracterization of what I said. I said that could happen.
Oh, I'm not trying to say what you said. That's what I understood.
No, there's no sign at this point that would be in Dallas, but that's not to be said, would be unheard of that you would have those shared easements.
Well, you would have to get their permission, and you
Agreed.
absolutely would before. So
And I don't dispute
I
that.
wanted to ask you that because that's what I understood. And I thought, whoa, if we put something up and it turned out it was in Dallas, they could make us move it. And then we'd be out our money.
We would not do something like that. We would get their agreement, just like we're having this discussion here.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that I misunderstood you.
Okay, I'd like to get Councilmember Harvey's input now, please.
I want to thank Greg and for his presentation this evening. And I guess the question I want to ask is, Greg, how much of the monument, I think we all understand that it's within Duncanville city limits. How much of the monument actually sits on TxDOT's right of way?
100%.
100%?
100% of the monument and 100% of the plantings. They're
So,
all in the interstate and the service road.
and so the government reserves the right to, I guess, administer what goes on in its right of way, right?
No.
Point of order.
Yeah, please, Councilmember Jameson, let Mr. Harvey and Mr. Ramey have their
I
conversation.
want the truth.
Thank you.
That would be nice.
Thank you.
Sir, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
So the right of way, the government has the right of way, and they have they can dictate what happens in the right of way, right?
Absolutely. The only reason why we're able to even do what we want to do along Cockrell Hill and in Winter Green is with their permission.
Okay.
We're
So
still working on another just to get permission for the monument. So none of this is a given. So yes, the city limit line is there, but we can't control what we have to ask permission from TxDOT to do anything in that right of way as well. Yes, sir.
okay. So if Cedar Hill were to move the sign back within their city limits, then would not having that monument there in our city limits where it is, what else could we do with that property?
We can't do anything with that property. I mean, what we could do is if we went back and let's say this is declined tonight and told Cedar Hill, they got to move their stuff, then we would have to go back to the designer and say, what can we do with $280,000 at this location? What does that look like? Maybe it just keeps the massing on that one side. Maybe they recommend that they do something on the other side to make up for what is vacated by when Cedar Hill departs. I think the main intent was we have a big massing that looks really wonderful and beautiful to look at as you're going south into Cedar Hill, and the same massing that looks really wonderful and beautiful as you're going north into Duncanville.
Okay.
I don't know what would happen what it would look like if Cedar Hill and their portion of the landscaping moves elsewhere. I'm not a landscape architect. I would assume that whatever we have would be half as interesting as what's been contemplated.
So from a practical standpoint, you have a monument sign in a place where it can be seen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the place where it is right now, though it is in Duncanville, you can see it if you're driving in that direction. So if it were to be moved, then where would it be moved so that it would be able to be seen? Because here's the thing, if you spent taxpayers' money to do a project that's supposed to be seen and you can't see it, then one could argue that's a waste of taxpayers' money. So where would the monument have to, where could the monument go that driving down, driving south on Highway 67, as you get to Wintergreen, because we all agree that Wintergreen is kind of like the boundary line between the two cities, right?
Yes.
Wintergreen. So where could it be in proximity to Wintergreen that you would be able to see it from the highway and then know, okay, this is the last Duncanville exit?
So basically well, as you're going south, you probably wouldn't know you're leaving Duncanville unless you saw something or you knew better. And so really what we're talking about when you're going south is where would Cedar Hill put their sign? I don't know where they would want to put it. We had some topo visibility view shed analysis. I guess that was part of the master plan. There's more visibility for them as they go further south of Cedar Hill. That's correct. But the idea, again, with this particular gateway was always to have a shared massing for everybody's benefit.
And
they can figure out where to put their stuff if that's what where council wants to go. Our stuff is where it's it's optimized. Our monument and the overall landscape planning is optimized based on the view shed analysis that was done a long time ago.
So other than the fact that we basically, I guess, secured our border in terms of making sure that the sign is in Cedar Hill, what tangible benefits do we have of moving the sign backwards? Is there any tangible benefit other than the fact that, well, our border is secured?
I don't see that. And again, if the thing that's always been the sort of the moderation for me for consideration is the actual land that's not TxDOT right of way, that's not sort of controlled by TxDOT. On that side is Cedar Hill. And that zig that makes up the city. And that's where the properties that they abut are all Cedar Hill properties.
Well, and I do know, just kind of looking at the bigger picture, that Duncanville has for a long time, worked with partnering in the neighboring cities to do initiatives. I think Duncanville was really one of the pioneers in working with its neighboring cities doing joint initiatives. So, you know, I'm thinking about the Tri-City Animal Shelter and regional dispatch, the regional jail. You know, those are all things, initiatives that we've worked successfully with our neighboring cities, including Cedar Hills. So what I get from you as you do this presentation is that this is just another evidence, another situation, circumstance in which I guess we as cities are working together for a common good. And I support that. That ends my questions.
Okay, I would like to try and capsulize what I'm taking away from everyone's participation, and I greatly appreciate everybody's participation. From only Councilman Vera Cruz gave any categorical opinion. All the rest of us, even myself, you know, and one of the things that Councilmember Harvey said that I think is key to this entire discussion, despite everything else, this is practicality versus principle. It's the principle of having another city's property sitting within our city limits, and is that principle worth falling over our sword, falling on our sword over? And I don't have an answer to that. Listening to what everybody has said, you know, pretty clear what Councilmember Jameson feels, and the rest. You know, Councilmember Cook's made a suggestion as well, which is, I think, workable. What I'm trying to do is kind of arbitrate this thing to find out, you know, is that principle so strongly felt, not only by our citizens, but as we as council members, the people that we represent, so important that land, that 1,300 feet of land that has no other purpose other than being a service road and dirt and gravel anyhow, that this sign has to be moved and has the potential for jeopardizing the entire ILA. So I do have one follow-on question, Greg.
Yes, sir.
And here again, you know, I'm going to ask you a question, and I know you don't have the answer. It's going to be shooting from the hip on your part. This one paragraph that is causing us this contention of principle, if that paragraph were to be deleted from the resolution, could we, as a council, pass the resolution but send that one piece back without jeopardizing the continuation of the entire agreement and moving forward? And this is your opinion. I know, so nobody's going to hang you out, you know, I'm just trying to get your feelings on this.
So we're talking about the monument in our city limits?
Yep, that one paragraph.
That might be a better question for Bob.
I'm sorry, what? You're muted, Paul. I can't hear you, Paul.
It's a better question for Bob because I think that's going to be a legal issue as far as
Okay.
it deleted out of the resolution.
Okay, all right.
If you pass the resolution without that provision in it, then it would have to go back to the Cedar Hill City Council for approval before it would be binding, because you've changed the terms of the agreement.
Okay.
So that's what would happen. You might be, maybe the better question is to, if the council has heartburn over proceeding because of this issue, is maybe table this to your next meeting and allow us to go and use all of our persuasive powers to see if moving it is an option.
That actually was going to be the next words out of my mouth. If we're going to jeopardize things, we don't want to jeopardize this project. There's too much money at stake. And we're talking principle. So, and I said, I think we as a council, we're kind of like, okay, tell me more. Am I going to fall on my sword over this principle? Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know. And it depends on how it all falls out with the entire resolution. So maybe going on what you said, Bob, would council accept tabling this and letting Greg go back and find out how Cedar Hill feels about if they can find space on their own land and come back and let us take this and
Can I make a few points? And again, you might say I'm shooting from the hip, but again, their monument in that land also comes with the landscaping. That's thing one. If they move the landscaping and they move the monument, then that takes care of the requirement to have any long-term operations and maintenance agreement. If we effectively draw a border between our project and their project, then there's no reason for them to do anything with us, to be perfectly honest. Unless we want to go put our stuff in their land. But I think I know where that's going. So I think what we've really got to make a decision, and I can table, I'll do whatever council directs me to do. I'll go talk to them, but this is my gut feeling, is that if we tell them to move their stuff south of Wintergreen to another visible place that is within their city limit, then we don't have a deal. We don't need a deal. We'll go get our own. We'll have to do our own stuff. We'll have to go back and split this and get it redesigned by both parties. And see what we can do with our 283,000 at this location. That's what I think. I'll do my best if that's the will of the council, but that's sort of what I think is if they move it before that, they take their plants and they do their own thing, and we take our plants and our money and we do our own thing, and we'll take a few steps back on a redesign.
Okay, Mr. Anderson,
I was just curious, Mr. Ramey, on so you're saying, like when you look at both sides, with you're driving down the freeway, whether you're going north or south, you're going to look at both sides and you're going to see mass of landscaping on both sides. Is that what, when you designed it, why did you design it in Duncanville? Or why did it get designed? Was that the reason? They kind of match each other on both sides. Is that?
Yes, the intent was to have a massing that bridged the entire corridor in this vicinity.
So you did, it was
the resources.
So I'm just it was done on purpose. You chose a site, you chose a spot along there that worked the best for both of them could be on both sides.
Yes, sir.
So so if you put it on the south side of Wintergreen, I guess
it would have to be significantly, it would be a split project. I'm sorry, sir.
Both sides would have been in Cedar Hill if you put it on the south side.
If we kept the, again, the initial intent which was a joint gateway, and we moved it to the visible area south of Wintergreen, it would be all in Cedar Hill, and we would be the ones for the Article 2 and the landscape agreement.
Okay,
unless we just completely say you do your thing and we do our thing.
Just one last thing, and it's I wish we would have known this a long time ago, and I know you didn't really but I do understand why you're trying. I think I'm getting it, why you tried to put it, why it was done that way. And so I think I didn't know if there's any intent to do anything bad. I can see now why you did that, but I wish we would have, like Mark said, like Councilman Cook said, and Jameson both, we would have known. So, but I still want what's the best job? Ultimately, that's what we have to ask here. What's the best looking job for Duncanville? What's going to be looking the best over just principle of it being on our side? But is it going to look bad if we separate them like this. That's just what I'm asking. I'm asking the question. I'm not making a one way or the other right now. I'm just in it. So it sounds like that's what you've done. So that's all I want to say.
Okay, Mr. McBurnett, I see your hand.
Thank you, Mayor. And hearing just a little further discussion in Monty's question, I'm saying that I'm going to side with it's going to be in TxDOT's property in their area, that it's going to be a one nice looking project. I think breaking it up is going to be bad, and I'm supportive of this ILA.
Okay, you know, I want to add, Monty, you just brought up a point that is important and significant in terms of appearance of what citizens are going to see traveling down Highway 67. And to your point, I think that appearance of these two cities, or that corridor in itself, overrides principle in terms of appearance of what's going on. Yeah, you know, moving it around and everything that's been done to this point, it's going to present, as it's designed today, would present a very nice appearance for our city. Because of the landscaping that's been designed to be adjacencies, I guess I would use in a retail term, you know, adjacencies across the highway so that it would appear really nice going either north or south on 67. Does that appearance to the public as they travel override this principle of you got your foot in my back door? And you know, Monty, if you wouldn't have said that, I was kind of like saying, you know, table this thing, have Greg go back and see what we can do. But you just brought up something that really hit home with me.
Mayor,
It's been designed that it really is optimal for both cities. Yeah, go ahead, Monty.
Well, Mayor, I mean, and I understand Councilman Jameson and that frustration and not knowing to, and but I really don't blame anybody either. I can see how something got out of whack, you know, getting designed and stuff. I think we should just really look at what looks the best. I mean, what looks the best for both. Back to that. And I want to say it again, and I support Councilman Jameson and what she's talking about, and we should have known. I wanted to say that, but ultimately I want the best looking project.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Monty. And it's, as I said, you brought up something I think really changes the traction on this thing, in my mind anyway. You know, it's, you know, Don has voiced his opinion. We know where Joe's is sitting. And I said, the principle that Councilmember Jameson has brought up has merit, definitely has merit. I don't know if it was sitting right on the border, probably wouldn't be having this discussion, but you're 13 feet inside the city of Duncanville, or 1,300 feet inside the city of Duncanville, but who cares other than infringement of principle? You got your foot in my back door. But I'll reiterate, the appearance of how great we look will be, I believe, more important than the principle of having a sign 1,300 feet inside the city limits, this zigzag city limit that's been created for the city of Duncanville. So Don, are you raising your hand again? No. Okay, Mr. Cooks, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, so I think I heard Ramey saying that if we did separate the two, that it was going to cost both cities different amounts of money, if that's the case, of going back to the drawing board. And so is Ramey, is that correct or not correct?
Sir, here's the bottom line. The design that we've been working on with this shared gateway at this location has already gone all the way through TxDOT. It's been designed, it's been approved. We're teeing this up for construction. And so yes, if we came back and said we need to do something different, then we would have to go back to go back to the landscape architects and say, take our 243 or whatever it is and do whatever you're gonna do, and we tell Cedar Hill, push your stuff south, and they're gonna have to redesign it as well, and then we'd take that back to TxDOT for their review so we could get this project let, and then we would have to start moving out on.
I was just trying to get you to tell me if dollars and cents. I was just trying to get you to tell me if
There would be dollars. I have,
I know you know the amount. I'm trying to get you the dollars.
yes, sir. There would be a cost associated with us to do something alternative.
Okay. I'm prepared to vote either way tonight. I do want to follow up because I do have friends, other elected officials in Cedar Hill, that even regardless of how we vote tonight, for my own education, I will be having a conversation with them. I'm just curious to know where they stood on the issue at all, or even if they had an issue. And Raimi, if you had to go back, I think it's how we go back and have the conversation, and not it's how we say what we want to say versus saying we don't want to do this. But I'm prepared to vote tonight if we need to vote tonight.
I'm prepared to take a vote on this as well. I think we've had very, very healthy discussion, open discussion, and I think each of us could argue both sides at this point, principle versus practicality. And each of us has our own strong feelings about that. But here again, I say, Councilmember Anderson's point about the overall impression of how this landscape is going to look, I think bears very strong consideration. So hearing what's going on and hearing everybody's opinions, the chair will accept a motion to approve.
How about a motion to defer it and talk about it after he goes and talks to Cedar Hill? Because, he hasn't even tried to talk to Cedar Hill yet to see if they can move it. Just move it.
He didn't know.
1,300 feet.
He didn't know he had to, Councilman. In his defense.
I know that. I know that. And part of the problem is that it was discussed with staff. It was not discussed with the council. And I'm sorry, but that's huge when you want to put an entry monument for another city within our city. And when you say, where would theirs go? That's not our call. That is their business where they put their sign. And I don't think that what they're saying, Mark, about dividing it up, they don't know that they have to divide it up. If all they need to do is move the sign within their city limit. And you don't have to divide it up. It might have to be refigured, and that might be unfortunate that you have to talk about it again and change it so that it's moved in, but it could still be contiguous if you moved it that way a little bit. You haven't even talked to them about it. Why can't we defer this until you make the attempt to talk to them about it?
Mr. Hager, do we need a motion to table this, or do we just table by consensus, or what's the proper movement at this point?
It would probably be appropriate to table it to your next meeting so that staff would have a chance to go back and at least know that that it was the council's will. I mean, if I'm a staff member going back to Cedar Hill, I would want to be armed with the fact that the council's asked me to do this so that it wouldn't be placed on Mr. Ramey or Mr. Frederickson. That's the desire of the council.
But we don't need a motion for that. We could just have consensus that we need to table this and ask Mr. Ramey to go talk. He knows what the.
Well, since it's a posted agenda item and you normally take action, it would probably be appropriate for you to make a motion or someone to make a motion to table it to your next meeting, so that I assume
I'll make a motion to table it till the next meeting.
There you go, sir.
A motion has been made to table it. Is there a second? Hearing no second, that motion is not approved. The chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve from Councilmember Harvey. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Harvey and a second from Councilmember Mac Burnett. We have had more than ample and adequate discussion. City Secretary, make sure everybody understands what we're doing is approving the resolution as written. City Secretary, please take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Vera Cruz, for or against?
For.
Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett, for or against?
4.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
As tough as this one was, and Johnette, I do support you. I'm going to have to vote for this.
Councilmember Cooks, for or against? You're muted, sir.
For.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against?
Against, and adamantly against. And I hope that we're never done this way again, where we're not given all the facts up until the very end.
At large, Councilmember Harvey, for or against?
For.
Mayor Gordon, for or against?
For. The motion to approve is carried with a vote of 6-1. I appreciate you very much, Council. Not an easy thing, but healthy again and very professional. Thank you. Okay, we are into item 5A, items for individual consideration. Consider a resolution authorizing Linebarger, Goggin, Blair, and Sampson LLP to obtain an order of sale which will allow for the foreclosure of, and to authorize the sale of the properties by Dallas County at public sale in accordance with section 34.05 of the Texas Property Code for the following properties: 1208 Crest Lane, 212 Hamilton Street, 11 Royal Avenue, and 307 West Camp Road. This is Mr. Summerlin's topic.
Thank you, Mayor. So the information that we have on this is that if the properties at 1208 Crest Lane and 212 Hamilton Street, if they do not sell, then Dallas County will entertain putting those properties into their resale program. However, if 11 Royal Avenue and 307 West Camp Wisdom do not sell, Dallas County will not accept that into their resale program. They consider those unmarketable, and so they'll remain in the name of the current owners. So if 11 Royal Avenue and 307 West Camp Wisdom Road don't sell, they will be added to this list of properties that we need to look at how to market or dispose of.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions of Mr. Summerlin? Seeing none, Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve Councilman Mac Burnett.
Thank you.
Second.
Councilmember Vera Cruz has seconded. City Secretary, roll call vote on item 5A, please.
Councilmember Vera Cruz, for or against?
For.
Mayor Pro Tem Mac Burnett, for or against?
4.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Cooks, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against?
For.
At large, Councilmember Harvey, for or against?
For.
Mayor Gordon, for or against?
4. Thank you, City Council, for unanimous approval. Moving on to item 5B. Consider a resolution amending resolution 2020-009, calling the general election of May 2nd, 2020, and amending resolution 2020-009R, postponing said election to November 3rd, 2020, for the purpose of electing one council member mayor, District 2 and District 4 for a 2-year term. Resolution is hereby amended by extending early voting by personal appearance to begin on Tuesday, October 13th, 2020, and shall continue through the 4th day before the election day, providing for extending hours during early voting and by extending early voting by mail until the election date, designating polling places, authorizing the execution of any amendments to joint election contract for the November 3rd, 2020 election. City Secretary.
Yes, Mayor, sorry. Okay, on July 27th, 2020, Governor Greg Abbott issued a proclamation to suspend section 85.001A of the Texas Election Code to extend the early voting period for November 3rd elections. What this does, early voting will be on October 13th through Friday, October 30th. This is to help with getting more voters out for COVID-19. It also allows the voters to hand deliver their marked mail ballots to the early voting clerk's office before Election Day. Questions?
Okay, just one thing I want to comment or just embellish just a little bit. If you read through the documentation of what we're approving tonight, that language replicates what is legally necessary. And that language does say the election of 3 council members, the mayor, council member from District 2, and council member from District 4. Now, you will recall that Councilmember Cooks and myself have already taken the oath of office in accordance with the legal opinion issued by the Attorney General and the individual in charge of elections for the entire state, that we were permitted to do that. So reading that language, don't be confused about whether the mayor's position and the District 4 council member position is going to show up back on the ballot in November. It will not. This is simply having to include the necessary legal language to make this binding and in accordance, well, full compliance with what the governor has issued. So I just wanted to make those comments for information. So Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Mayor, I'd like to make the motion to approve Councilman McBurnett.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Harvey. City Secretary, please take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Vera Cruz, for or against?
For.
Mayor Pro Tem McBurnett, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
For.
Cooks, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against?
For.
At-large Councilmember Harvey, for or against?
For.
Mayor Gordon, for or against?
For. Thank you, City Council. That motion is unanimously approved. Moving on to item number 5C, consider a resolution appointing someone as a member of the governing body to participate and cast ballots on behalf of the City of Duncanville as North Central Texas Council of Governments, NCT COG in parens via conference to elect a new executive board on August 14th, 2020. This is Mr. Frederickson's item.
Yeah, Mayor, members of council, we were giving a notification by the North Central Texas Council of Governments that due to COVID, they have not been able to have a general assembly meeting in order to elect a new board. So because of COVID, they will be having a video conference instead on August 14th. Per the North Central Texas Council of Government rules, each city is allowed or permitted one voting participant at the General Assembly via video conference. And then a live stream of the meeting will be available for everybody else that would be interested in watching the meeting. So it's incumbent upon council to appoint one person, one member of the governing body to serve as that member to participate and cast ballots on behalf of the City of Duncanville.
Okay, just a little input on this one. When COG sent this email out to everyone that's involved in COG, myself included, because I am the official appointed alternate on the RTC for COG to Mayor McCowan, who is the primary representing Southwest Dallas County on the RTC. I asked the question, is my official designation as the alternate, does that put me in the position of taking this appointment as the person from the City of Duncanville? And the answer was no. that the city still has to appoint a person into that, that my appointment as official alternate under Mayor McCallum does not suffice. So that's why we have this here tonight, and I'm willing to do this. If you all want to appoint me to take this role and taking that vote on the on those boards, I would do that. So, Councilmember Harvey.
I make a motion that you are it, Mayor.
We have a motion from Councilmember Harvey, and we have a second from Councilmember Vera Cruz, that the resolution would then read, consider resolution appointing Mayor Barry Gordon as member of the governing body, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this city secretary, this will be a roll call vote. Thank you.
Hey, Mayor, did anybody else want to do it? Or I was just curious. Was there anybody else that wanted any other council? I don't, but I was just curious.
I don't, does anybody else want to do it?
Just curious. Go ahead. I'm good.
We're
You
good.
don't have to ask that, sir, before you got to the meeting.
Councilmember Vera Cruz, for or against?
For.
Mayor Pro Tem McBurnett, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Cooks, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against? Councilmember Jameson, are you there?
For.
At-large Councilmember Harvey, for or against?
For.
Mayor Gordon, for or against?
For. Thank you, council, for unanimous approval of that appointment. Moving on to item D, discuss and consider a resolution approving an amendment to the City of Duncanville economic incentive policy to preclude economic incentive offers to business enterprises without a specified end user or owner. Mr. Frederickson.
Mayor, members of council, per rules of procedure, Councilmember Johnette Jameson requested an item to be placed on the next agenda, asking that council consider amending the City of Duncanville policy statement and guidelines for economic development grants and tax abatements. The amendment would exclude any and all tax abatement offers to any speculative business propositions. Any request for tax abatement must include the name of the business and the specific type of business that would be conducted in order to be considered. And I'll turn it over to Councilmember Jameson because of the request from her. If there's any other follow-up.
It just seems prudent to me when you offer a tax abatement that you know who it is you're offering it to and what kind of business it's going to be. When we offered a tax abatement to the Hilton, we knew what the Hilton was and what it brought to the city. When we offered it to Costco, we knew who it was and what they offered to the city. When we offered it to W&B, we can go through every business. And lately we've been having speculative buyers, and what they're doing is they're wanting to buy a piece of property and use the tax abatements as incentives for their property, but they can't even tell us what it is. So when you fill out the paperwork and you're guessing at how much revenue you're going to bring in and all this, because it's a guess. They're not even telling us what it's going to be there. I do not think that it is prudent or wise for us to even consider offering a tax abatement to anybody we don't know who they are, what business it is, what they're bringing to Duncanville.
Okay, very clear explanation of your concern. Here again, I think this is important enough for us to go around the table and just to hear some thoughts. So Councilmember Vera Cruz, do you have any thoughts about this?
I do. On one hand, I do agree with Councilmember Jameson. On the other, I think we ought to maybe get some of our other our DECD or involved so they could do some of the legwork for us. That's probably all I have to say about that.
Okay, Mr. McBurnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Much as I'd always like to know who it is, there's times that they're not, and in this case, we're not sure. But I think we would be remiss if we didn't listen to anybody's offers, and that's how I feel with that. I would tend to agree with what Councilman Faircruz said, something as well that the 4B possibly should have involvement with, or something that we should discuss in our joint meeting.
Okay, Councilmember Anderson.
So, before I answer the first question, I go back to the same thing I've been saying all along, is that we need, as a council, we need to set the course, not the EDC board, not the planning and zoning board. We need to set the course. That's what we've been elected to do. And we need to say what we want instead of saying, let's just see what comes to us. We need to kind of like say what we want. And I can't believe that we would give anybody money, really, any kind of grant or anything, and without knowing who it is. And for a developer to speculate and flip a building, because that's what happens. Councilman Jameson says that there's developers all the time that go out and they call it entitlement, right? They entitle the land, they get the zoning, they get the tax abatement, they get all the stuff set up, and what do? Then they flip that package of entitlements, and we just don't have enough land we need to decide what we want remaining, just like our leftover lots. We need to decide what we want. What is the course, or what's the guidelines we want to get? And I still don't think we've done that. I don't think we've done that. It's not fair to staff and our boards beneath us not to do that, to give them some direction. We're the leaders. We're the board of directors of this corporation. And we need to decide what the course is going to be. And so I support Councilman Jameson on this issue for sure. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Cooks.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Jameson, for putting this on the agenda as a policy issue. Because I think many times we go in circles simply because we've not made a policy of it. So I applaud you for putting this on the agenda for policy. And I do agree with it as well. I'll definitely state that. But also in talking to and having a few calls about this agenda item is asking that allowing the other partners from EDC to have a chance to give some feedback. I'll agree with that as well. So I'm gonna agree that hopefully we will keep the same thought in mind for policy, but let's also shift it over to a joint conversation with EDC, because although they are not participating on the one we're speaking of, they will be speaking of ones in the future. And so I would just ask that they would participate also for us to set the policy, because at the end, as Councilman Anderson just said, we're the one that will be voting on the policy or not, and policy overrides everything else. So I would prefer we wait until we have a joint meeting, even though I'm in agreement with what she just asked.
Okay, Councilmember Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. Not very long ago, there was some angst among the EDC board members because we had made a decision, and I don't question the decision that we made, but in talking with some of them, they told me that, well, we feel like we're left out of the process. And so the reason why I bring that up is because we ask people to serve. We ask them to give of their time. So I think the least we ought to be willing to do is to give them an opportunity and listen to them, give them a chance to speak and let us listen. And I'm not saying that what they will say will sway us, but I've learned through my experience that you get more buy-in when people feel like they've had an opportunity to participate. And I think there's a view in the community that the EDC is the most important board we have. Well, how important can it be if you have the members that are on there now saying, well, it didn't make any sense for me to be on that board because council did what they wanted to do anyway. And so I'm not saying that council can't do what it wants to do, but let it do it within the confines and boundaries of a process where people feel like they're included and not excluded. So yes, I'm in support with Councilmember Jameson. I think it would be good for us to know exactly who we're doing business with. But before we do that, let's hear from the people that we turn to kind of help advise us along the way as it relates to economic development. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I agree with getting EDC involved as well for already what's been stated. I don't need to reiterate it. The only concern that I have about the language of it, and this is for something for folks on EDC to consider, and I hope it would be communicated to EDC as well, and to each of us, is that this language as proposed is a categorical, definitive, without exception, declination of anybody coming to us and saying, I might want to come to Duncanville, and here's what I might be asking for. And that definitive categorical language has a very strong possibility of dissuading anybody from wanting to do business with us. They're gonna say, okay, you know, fine, if that's the way you are, I'll go to Grand Prairie, I'll go to Cedar Hill, I'll go somewhere else. So, you know, when EDC, I agree, this needs to go to EDC, and I would just give some input to say that there might be the possibility of augmenting that language in terms of putting a priority on knowing, but still allowing the entertainment of a proposition where we don't know. Because, and you know, go back to one particular thing that I've learned since being around here that didn't even know about until I got involved with stuff, is that developers sometimes will sign non-disclosure agreements with clients. And that is a legal binding document that they are, you know, they have a confidentiality agreement that says they can't, a developer can't disclose to a council who they're talking to. So if, when EDC considers this, if you all agree that it needs to go back, that consider that possibility. And, you know, if it's strong enough that we want to say it that way, great. Then EDC will come back and agree with the language that Councilmember Jameson has written. And I agree with the intent as well of what Councilmember Jameson has proposed. But there again, I think we're kind of all in agreement that we need to have EDC involved in this before we go ahead and cut the policy. Councilmember Jameson, yes, please.
The main thing about it is we're not saying who can come and who won't. And as far as disclosure policies, they don't have to tell us who's coming. What we're talking about is offering a tax incentive, and you don't want to tell us. I mean, it could be something that we really didn't want, but that's not even what we're talking about. We're talking about, and it's the same anywhere you go. And I don't care, we can go back to the EDC. I'm surprised they didn't come up with it. If you have a discount or a coupon, a tax abatement, if you're asking for something, but I'm not going to tell you who I am. That's what I'm talking about. They don't have to tell us who they are. They don't have to tell us who they're selling it to. If you want a tax abatement, that's what I'm talking about. You're asking for something from us, either ad valorem, Freeport, sales tax. You're asking for us to give you something, but King's X, I'm not going to tell you who I am. It's not that I'm asking for, like the mayor was saying, that they have an agreement not to divulge who they are. They don't have to tell me. But don't ask for us to give you something and you don't want to tell us who you are. Why would I give you a tax abatement and I don't know who you are or what you bring to the city? That was my point. I got frustrated with, we keep bringing, I didn't even know who those guys were when we had the last meeting. And we had 5 guys introduced to us who had sold commercial real estate for Trammell Crow. I thought, okay, she has a new real estate agent. Come to find out, no, they're buddies and they want to go in on a speculative buy, but they asked for even more abatements than the previous buyer. Oh, and by the way, he was a friend, and I think he dropped out because of COVID, but I'm not sure, but we're all doing the same thing. We're speculating.
Mayor,
And if we give those abatements, then they get to keep them no matter what. That was my point.
Yeah.
And that's fine. You can go back to the DC EDC. I don't care.
Okay. Mr. Baker?
yeah, I was just concerned that we were getting into conversations that we had in executive session. That was all, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we've got, yeah, Mr. Anderson, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we make such a big deal about these developers. These developers don't care about our city. What we're interested in is the businesses that want to move to our city. And that's who we want to give, in my opinion, that's who we want. We want to incentivize something. Let's incentivize the business to come here, not the developer. And if you put the word out that we're willing to we're opening the doors. We have policy. We're willing to set policy. And we're set incentives for these types of businesses. I don't know. These developers don't care. When are we going to learn this? They don't care about your city. Those guys could care less about our city. Let's face it. You see them over and over for years. They come in and they build these big strip centers and stuff. And where are they now? They were all nice to you back then. Remember that? Where are they now? They're gone. We want the businesses. We want the businesses in this city. Let's give them the incentives, not the developers. And there is a change in this whole country right now. There is a change in this whole country about this incentive thing and how it's just not working. Now, it didn't work in many, many different places. It's not worked. It's built something that's a house of cards.
Well, we're on to the resolution itself. And, here again, I'll ask city attorney. I think we've heard all the comments that everybody is in agreement that needs to go to EDC and let them discuss this and bring something to us. So do we need a motion to table this and send it to EDC, or is it enough?
Yeah, Mayor, I would suggest the following motion. Motion to defer agenda item 5D until such time as the council has had a joint meeting with the Economic Development Corporation to discuss.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Or I'm sorry, is there a motion to that effect?
I make a motion to the effect of every word that Attorney Hager said.
And Mr. Cooks is the second on that. So City Secretary, please take a roll call vote. Everybody understands what we're doing. This is an approval of a motion to have this discussed in a joint session with EDC.
Councilmember Veracruz, for or against?
For.
Mayor Pro Tem McBurnett, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Anderson, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Cooks, for or against?
For.
Councilmember Jameson, for or against?
For.
At-large Councilmember Harvey, for or against?
For.
Mayor Gordon, for or against?
For. Thank you. Unanimously approved. Going on to our last item, item 5E, take any necessary action as a result of executive session. There is no action to be taken as a result of executive session. Moving on to item 6, we have staff and board reports. And as we have done in the past, all of this information has been provided to each of our city council members in advance with the assumption that you would read them and be prepared to ask any questions. So is there any question on item A, which has received the FY20 third quarter investment report as of June 30th, 2020? This is item 6A. Any questions on 6A from Mr. Summerlin? Seeing none, moving on to item 6B, receive the monthly financial report as of June 30th, 2020. Mr. Summerlin, I did have a comment, more of an observation in terms of looking at the general fund summary, that we're only, I don't know if the only is the right word, we're only 2.5% lower than the same time last year. Looking at what we're experiencing, and I know these figures are 2 months in arrears. Do you want to, you can say no if you want to, do you want to predict anything for the next 2 months going forward in terms of that 2.5%? If you still want to say no because you really don't have you don't want to go on record, that's fine too.
Well, I think that this conversation probably is more appropriate for our budget meeting in terms of sharing a little more in detail because this financial report is in arrears, and when we do the budget, I'll be sharing very much up-to-date information. And I can tell you that the trend is much better than what we anticipated, but we probably want to have a deeper discussion in the budget workshop.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Summerlin on item 6B? Okay, seeing none, moving on to item 6C, receive the Parks and Recreation quarterly report. Any questions from council on this one? All right, seeing none, moving on to item 6D, receive the Fieldhouse quarterly report. Any questions on this one? Mr. Brassfield, I'm sorry, yep.
Yes, I want to hear our Fieldhouse report.
I hear something, but I don't know where
I think Councilmember Jameson wanted to hear the Fieldhouse report.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, I'm sorry, Councilmember James, you weren't, I wasn't picking you up. All right, Mr. Brassfield, the floor is yours. Mr. Brassfield, are you there?
I'm trying to get a hold of him, sir. Oh, he says he doesn't have sound. Hold on.
Council, let me ask if Timothy Hamilton, who's filling in for Bart, if you'll allow him to make the presentation, since we're having technical difficulties with Craig's. If you don't mind, Timothy can make the report, if that's acceptable. Timothy, if you don't mind.
All righty, thank you, Council and Mayor and Interim City Manager. Can you all hear me okay? Awesome, thank you. So the next slide, please. This is our third quarter report for the field house. Next slide. We are giving a summary here to present the revenue, expenses, and net income or loss for the quarter, April through June. Our major contributing factors in this situation was that the field house was closed from March 16th to June 15th. So that entails a very large chunk of opportunities here. And then we also discuss a little bit of the details of what we missed out on as far as tournaments, rentals, programming at the after school and summer camp programs. So that's how we got to that $95,000 figure there. Next slide, please. Here you see the actuals of our field house revenue for year to date and what the trend line is. And obviously that is highly impacted by having 3 solid months off where we were not open and generating revenue. So that we are significantly below that line. Next slide, please. Expenses as well. We are trending lower, but that's also because we weren't open. And so that is that. The next slide, please. So year to date, where we sit right now, you can see that with a little bit of revenue in June, that has helped us regain some of that total there. But we are still in the red for the year to date. But we are having some strong months here, a lot of activity scheduled. And as we go to the next slide, next slide, please. You'll see here in July, the revenues that are not shown in that prior, which will be in this final quarter when we report back in November, or I'm sorry, October next. We'll be covering July. We had the 6 tournaments listed there on the weekends. That's nothing to say also about what we have as far as nightly rentals at the field house. So obviously there are supplementals to the weekends, but the weekends is where they really make the money. There's some slides missing. Okay, next slide, please. August, here's how August looks. And as you can tell, the listings of events is building as we go to the next month after that. Next slide, please, in September. And on that first slide, we mentioned how 3 of the tournaments that had been canceled rescheduled. So those are also being captured in these reservations that are upcoming for our weekends. Next slide, please. Wanted to briefly share with the council what protocols have been put in place at the field house and the very detailed steps that have been taken by Craig and his staff in trying to not only follow the governor's guidance, the CDC guidance, but also really trying to think outside the box on how to utilize the spaces that we have most efficiently. And so we talk about our capacity here. And then on the next slide, I believe we talk about the protocols. Next, yeah, thank you. And so the main entrance is for fan entrance only. And we use the side entrance only for coaches, players, and referees. So that's an established protocol to try to keep a separation there so you're not having cross-contamination. Also, one of the things that they do is to encourage all, and it's been instructed to the tournament directors to make sure that all the players and coaches are remaining in their vehicles. They're supposed to be remaining in their vehicles until their games, not congregating around the side entrance. And from the feedback from Fieldhouse staff and from Craig, this does seem to be working quite well. And, you know, once again, you still have to have some times where you're interjecting yourself and requesting people to spread out and do the social distancing, but everyone's been compliant. It is mandatory to have the face mask inside. And so, next slide, please.
Wait, can I ask something?
Yes, ma'am.
On that last slide that you just had there, where you have tournament directors will be required to provide their own labor and supplies for maintaining health and safety of their participants, including thermometers for temp checks, wipes, sanitizers, etc. The clean player benches. So we're not doing that. It's the people that are coming with their teams are required to clean and maintain. Is that what that's saying?
That is, go ahead.
Well, Timothy, I was going to say, yeah, council member, it's actually both. When we make agreements with these tournament directors, that they do have staff that go in there and clean after them, but we also have staff that are at the facility that are constantly cleaning the facility overall, bathrooms and any other public spaces as well. So it's a coordinated effort between staff at the field house and the tournament folks as well.
Okay,
Right,
because
because
I think that would be kind of risky to just let them do it.
It's a good question because, and you know, I think the main thing too is you know, we're insisting upon any of these tournaments that are coming in that they're providing us the protocols for what they're going to do. You know, I know one, for example, that, you know, there are no ticket sales at the gate, that they have to pre-sell those tickets, as Timothy mentioned before, moving them outside the facility and not having them gather are big items. But obviously the biggest issue for us is making sure that they're wearing their masks. That's probably the biggest thing that we can insist upon for anybody that's coming in there. And of course, we get certain some pushback, but overall, I think it's been fairly, you know, well regarded and adhered to.
Okay.
Good question, though. Sorry, Timothy, go.
No problem. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. And then, so for the coaches and players, they are actually, they use the upstairs area, and that is, they've kind of made the upstairs area into quote unquote locker rooms to be able to help try to keep them separate as well, and provide an opportunity for them to have a social distance area as well, so they're not downstairs amongst everyone else in between games there as they're getting ready. So we just wanted to share this with you all. And if you want to go to the last slide there, we just wanted to share this as information to help understand the significant steps and the significant undertaking that Craig and his team has taken down there at the field house to try to keep us as safe as possible, to keep the tournament people who are visiting Duncanville as safe as possible. We have responded to feedback that we receive or hear about from, you know, the community. We've heard that there's been times where it's been observations of people gathered around the entrance on the side entrance there, visible from Main Street, and it's been addressed with that particular tournament director as soon as we find out that there is that type of gathering, that they're not allowed to do that. And so it'll be something that would be in the future a consideration if it were to occur again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. And I just want to commend all the staff of our field house, looking at the control necessary that's been implemented and devised, you know, looking at the protocols for the players and the coaches and referees and everything that we're doing, that is no small job. Considering the number of people coming in for those tournaments, and, you know, we have young adults, we have adolescents that some of them don't grasp the seriousness of COVID-19. You know, why do I have to wear a mask? I'm not going to catch it. I'm not going to give it. And we hear that. But, you know, for our staff, for Mr. Brassfield and the rest of the staff, and for Timothy and Bart and anybody associated with controlling the crowds in that field house, I want to commend you for a tough job, because it's you're not only having to protect yourself from individuals that might be carriers and having to contend with those individuals that say this isn't necessary what you're doing. The enforcement of what you're doing is not an easy job. And so kudos to y'all for doing that, putting this together. Any other comments from any council members? Okay.
Thank you, Council, appreciate it.
Okay. That takes us to the end, and timestamp on adjournment is 9:38. Thank you very much, City Council. Very professional, very well done. Take care. Stay safe. 9:38.